Chapter 1233. Zhou had always wanted the Star Stealer skill crystal to drop, but he didn't know if his luck was bad or if the skill wasn't fated with him. But it never dropped. Although Zhou had never practiced Star Stealer, he knew that there was a certain chance of Star Stealer stealing companion beasts in the past. Furthermore, it was a random companion beast. However, seeing Lu Yun's current state, Zhou knew that something was amiss. This fellow Star Stealer had probably undergone a new change. With a thought, Zhou instantly retracted the Shura saber that he had slashed down. At the same time, a legendary companion beast sword that had dropped from the ancient sword tomb appeared in Zhou's hand as he continued slashing down. The series of actions was completed in an instant. Lu Yun's fingers were fast and accurate. At the same time he clamped the blade, Zhou felt his hand empty. The sword in his hand had vanished. Furthermore, the sword-type companion beast had severed its connection with Zhou. The tattoo had vanished. Haha, you didn't expect it, did you? Lu Yun laughed out loud, as Zhou's sword was already in his hand. Lu Yun had planned this for a long time. He had previously seen Zhou easily cleave apart the golden battle god's body with the Shura saber. He knew that the Shura saber was definitely a manifestation of a Terror-grade companion beast. He had schemed to steal the Shura saber while the king of scavenging knew nothing about him. Over the years, Lu Yun hadn't been idle. Star Stealer was only a foundation, but now he had cultivated it to an unattainable level. He had broken through the limits of Star Stealer's level and abilities. He no longer needed to randomly steal companion beasts. As long as his fingers could touch a companion beast, he could steal it back. Of course, there were restrictions. Therefore, Lu Yun had schemed to steal the Shura saber back while the other party didn't understand him at all. However, halfway through his laughter, Lu Yun realized that something was amiss. The weapon in his hand didn't look like the Shura saber, but a sword. After carefully sensing it, Lu Yun immediately had the urge to vomit blood. This wasn't a Terror-grade companion beast. It was actually a legendary sword. Strange, what's wrong with this fellow? Under such circumstances, why did he suddenly change to a different sword? Could it be that he already knew that my Star Stealer was powerful? Who is he? Lu Yun looked at Zhou in surprise, as he felt that something was amiss. The people watching the live stream didn't have as many thoughts as Lu Yun, nor did they have good eyesight. They only saw Zhou slash at Lu Yun before the saber in his hand disappeared. Lu Yun, who was empty-handed, had an additional weapon in his hand. They were all astonished. Holy Pirate really lives up to his name. He stole the Scavenger King's weapon during the fight. That works too. How'd he do it? To be able to steal the other party's companion beast, isn't this ability too sick? Holy Pirate is too scary. With this kind of power, he can rob whoever he wants. Who would dare use a companion beast in front of him? Lu Yun has indeed trained to the point where he can easily steal companion beasts. What a powerful fellow. Zhou marveled inwardly, but he didn't stop moving. He secretly circulated the sky-stealing, sun-swapping technique and instantly swapped a companion beast with a marked sword in Lu Yun's hand. Bam! Lu Yun realized that the sword in his hand had suddenly turned into another sword. He immediately realized that something was amiss as he threw the sword out. The sword exploded in midair, causing Lu Yun to let out a tragic cry as his body was sent flying. By the time everyone reacted, they realized that Lu Yun had vanished. When they looked at the Scavenger King, he was nowhere to be seen. Only the huge turtle was still fighting the golden battle god. Above Venus, two silhouettes appeared one after the other. Soon, they left the Venus dungeon and arrived at a rift valley. Junior brother, how have you been? Lu Yun had already guessed who Zhou was. Although the sky-stealing sun-swapping technique was half the power of the God-Fiend era, the other half was the power of the sky-stealing sun-swapping art. Return the item, Zhou said as he extended his hand. Lu Yun said seriously, Junior brother, the value of these dimensional crystals is limited. I have a sale that I want to cooperate with you. If we succeed, the benefits we can obtain will far exceed these dimensional crystals. What sale? Zhou knew that this fellow definitely had some plans. Otherwise, Why would he expose the secret of entering and leaving the Venus dimensional zone for no reason? Lu Yun chuckled and said, "We definitely can't defeat a calamity-grade creature. No matter how much you pick up, you can at most pick up those golden battle god companion eggs. Previously, you were already very lucky to pick up 2 golden battle god companion eggs. In the future, the chances of you picking up companion eggs will only increase." Zhou naturally knew that the first dimensional creature to appear in a dimensional zone had a much higher chance of dropping a companion egg. If he killed too many, the drop rate would become very low. If I reveal the secret of entering and leaving the Venus dimensional zone, the League of Defender and the various factions will definitely not be able to hold back an attempt to conquer the Venus dimensional zone. At the very least, they will want to kill the Golden Battle God first. When the time comes, we can rob them. The benefits we can obtain are much better than trying our luck to drop companion eggs, Lu Yun said. What if they refuse to give it to me? We can't really kill them all, right? I don't want to be enemies with the entire world, Zhou said. It doesn't matter if they don't give it to me. Isn't there still me? Lu Yun said with a cheeky smile. Zhou was slightly taken aback. Only then did he realize that Lu Yun was openly stealing. If the League of Defender comes, there will definitely be more than 1 or 2 of them. Can you take advantage of them? Zhou sized up Lu Yun. He didn't believe that Lu Yun had the ability to fight everyone alone and rob the fellows from the League of Defender. Cave Era, Hermit, Great Sky Fiend, and Blood Shaman weren't people to be trifled with. That's why I originally only wanted to find an opportunity to steal one. But since you're here, we could do it bigger. How about it? Do you want to cooperate and do something big? Lu Yun continued, trying to rope Zhou in. We can work together, but you have to listen to me. Zhou naturally didn't care about morality or benevolence towards the League of Defender. All right, no problem. I'll listen to you. How about splitting it 50-50 after the deed is done? Lu Yun said. Sure. Return the dimensional crystals you took first. Zhou felt that this matter was feasible and discussed the details with Lu Yun. The risk of this matter wasn't high. After all, the 2 humans who were best at spatial powers were here. Although there were other spatial experts, there weren't many who were stronger than them. Even if the robbery failed, it wouldn't be a problem for the 2 of them to survive. While the 2 of them were discussing, the huge turtle had already reflected all 6 golden battle gods to death. No matter what kind of bullets hit it, they failed to injure it at all. Chapter 1234. Clang. A gunshot deafened everyone's eardrums. This sound was somewhat different from the gunshots they were used to hearing. In the past, the bullets that flew out from the door destroyed everything in one shot. Even if it was Death God number 10, he could only revive after being killed. However, this time, the bullets that flew out from the door failed to penetrate the turtle's body. A metal bullet hit the turtle's glabella, and as though it had embedded itself into a steel plate, the entire bullet sank in. One could see that the end of the bullet was red metal, but the bullet's complete appearance couldn't be seen. Holy **T, it didn't penetrate it. Everyone looked at the turtle in disbelief. Clang, clang. Shots rang out one after another. The bullets hit different parts of the big turtle's body. Every bullet was embedded in the big turtle's body, but they couldn't penetrate its body or kill it. The turtle failed to deflect the bullets either. All it did was endure the bullets and walk towards the door step by step. Don't tell me that turtle is a calamity-grade creature. It looks very strong, but it doesn't seem to have a calamity domain, right? Perhaps it just hasn't used it. Look at the creature inside the door. It doesn't use a domain either. Everyone discussed. Zhou wore a look of surprise as well. He was also watching the battle, and he was outside the Venus Dimensional Zone's entrance. It was very difficult to see the dimensional zone from the outside. It was unknown where Lu Yun had obtained a mirror that could reflect the image inside the dimensional zone. It left Zhou somewhat envious. However, with this mirror, it saved him a lot of trouble. Zhou didn't need to return to Earth to use the Rubik's Cube to watch the battle inside. This dragon turtle has such a hard shell. It has already blocked 6 shots. I wonder if it can block the 7th shot? Lu Yun said as he looked at the image in the mirror in surprise. From the looks of it, That turtle should be at the calamity grade. Furthermore, it's a defense-type calamity grade. However, it's hard to say if it can withstand the 7th shot. This is a battle between spear and shield. It depends on who is stronger. Although Zhou said that, he was thinking of another problem. This turtle was most likely at the calamity grade. If it was killed inside, he wondered if a companion egg or dimensional outcome would drop. If it could drop, it would be too tempting. He had never touched a calamity grade companion egg before. Although Truth Listener could barely enter the calamity grade, the price paid was too great. The last time, he had to use Wang Mingyuan's help to retrieve Truth Listener. Zhou didn't wish to do it again. The Venus dungeon was clearly different from the dungeons on Earth. Any creature that entered the dungeon could drop a companion egg. Big Turtle was probably no exception. However, even if a companion egg dropped, it was still a problem if he dared to enter to retrieve it. If he entered without any cover, he would most likely be shot in the head. Many powerful creatures on Earth were also looking at the 7th shot. What a pity! In a cave in Chess Mountain, a chained woman was also watching the live stream. She looked at Big Turtle with some regret and muttered to herself, "Such a rare creature has to send itself to death not long after it's born. If it can grow for a period of time, the Venus Dimensional Zone probably won't be able to stop it." Under everyone's watchful eyes, the fatal 7th shot finally rang out. This shot, which could even kill Death God number 10, who had an immortal body, hit Big Turtle's neck with a bang. This shot didn't hit Big Turtle's head. When the bullet hit Big Turtle's neck, it was as though it had hit a steel plate, producing large amounts of sparks. However, amidst the sparks, the bullet shot into Big Turtle's body and penetrated its shell. In the next moment, it drilled out from behind Big Turtle's body with sparks. Bam! Big Turtle's body fell to the ground as blood immediately flowed out from the front and back of the gun like a fountain. Even a calamity grade can't withstand that shot. Everyone was alarmed as a chill arose in their hearts. Zhou and Lu Yun looked at each other and saw the greed in each other's eyes. They thought of the same thing. Although Big Turtle looked like it was about to die, it wasn't completely dead. It was still breathing. To be able to withstand the terrifying attack of a calamity grade without being killed directly, Big Turtle's identity as a calamity grade was basically confirmed. If a companion egg really dropped, they were considering if they should take the risk to snatch it. Big Turtle struggled to get up, but after struggling a few times, it fell to the ground again. More and more turtle blood flowed out. It looked like it was impossible for it to survive. Death was only a matter of time. The creature from the intersect seemed to know that Big Turtle couldn't survive and didn't continue shooting. The intersect creature didn't continue shooting, but left Zhou's heart alarmed. In-game, the creature would continue shooting until it killed the enemy. It wouldn't stop shooting until the enemy was completely dead. However, in reality, the other party would stop shooting. This action appeared very intelligent. Big Turtle was already dead, so there was no need for him to fire another shot. If he fired another shot, he would expose his ability to kill with 7 shots, making it easier for others to deal with him. After all, it's a creature in real life. It's understandable that it has high intelligence. It's not as rigid as it is in-game. However, this way, it will be even more difficult to kill him. Furthermore, the method I previously thought of might not work against him. Zhou was somewhat depressed. In-game, the creature would first attack the creature with the highest level. Therefore, as long as a Terrorgrade creature was present, it wouldn't attack Zhou, a human with a mythical body. However, in reality, the other party had high intelligence and could definitely tell his importance. If they attacked him first, everything would be over. As Zhou thought about it, Big Turtle was struggling to crawl towards the door, leaving a long trail of blood on the ground. The blood in its body was almost drained. It was still a distance away from the door, but Big Turtle looked like it was on the verge of death. It couldn't even crawl. Suddenly, Big Turtle, which looked like it couldn't move, raised its head as though it had a final burst of energy. It gave all the spectators a fright. In the next second, Big Turtle's actions shocked everyone. It opened its mouth and spat out something. After it spat out that thing, all of Big Turtle's essence, chi, and spirit dissipated. Big Turtle's last breath also dissipated, and it fell to the ground on the spot. Most of the people's gazes were attracted by what Big Turtle had spat out. It was a round jade ball the size of a soccer ball. The jade ball was milky white and translucent. There seemed to be clouds churning inside, making it look magical. That thing, could it be a companion egg? Zhou Wen and Lu Yun exchanged looks. Almost at the same time, the two of them teleported into the dimensional zone. A calamity-grade companion egg was something that could drive anyone crazy. Chapter 1235. The moment Zhou Wen appeared in the room, he locked onto the football-sized jade ball and reached out to grab it. Lu Yun's speed wasn't any slower than Zhou Wen's. He also reached out to grab the jade ball. Their fingers touched the jade ball almost at the same time. The spectators were alarmed when they saw the king of scavenging appear with God Pirate to snatch the jade ball. They shared the same thoughts as Zhou Wen and Lu Yun. They felt that the jade ball was very likely the dragon turtle's companion egg. If they could really snatch it, its value would be immeasurable. When Zhou Wen saw Lu Yun touch the jade ball, he sucked hard in a bid to suck the jade ball over. To his surprise, Lu Yun had the same thoughts. The two of them sucked hard at the same time, but they failed to pull the jade ball back. Clang! Almost at the same time, Zhou Wen's Shura blade and Lu Yun's dagger slashed at each other at the same time, hoping to force the other party back, but they collided. With this collision, both of them used too much strength. The terrifying force sent them retreating, and their fingers left the jade ball. Seeing the jade ball fly out again, everyone's hearts leaped to their throats as their gazes involuntarily followed the jade ball. However, in the next moment, everyone felt their vision blur. The jade ball had somehow landed in Lu Yun's hand. As expected of God Pirate. "He's just too fast," Zhang Chunqiu exclaimed. Zhang Chunqiu exclaimed in amazement. With his eyesight, he actually failed to see how Lu Yun had taken the jade ball. Bam! With a gunshot, the head of Lu Yun, who had obtained the jade ball, exploded. The guardian armor on his body was like paper, completely useless. However, a strange scene happened. Lu Yun, whose head had been blown off, turned into quicksand that scattered to the ground. As for the other Lu Yun, he held the jade ball and vanished in the blink of an eye. He had likely teleported out of the dimensional zone. Everyone was dumbfounded. This series of actions was so smooth that it left them dumbfounded. Before anyone could react to what had happened, Lu Yun had already left with the jade ball. When they turned to look at the king of scavenging, he was already gone. Furthermore, the Rubik's Cube's live stream had stopped and returned to the scene outside the dimensional zone. Without a doubt, the dragon turtle was completely dead, as expected of Holy Thief. He's too impressive. His hands are so fast that it makes one's hair stand on end. I can't even see how he took away the companion egg. If I let you see it, would I still be called Holy Pirate? Holy Pirate is really impressive this time. That's a calamity-grade companion egg. If he really hatches, won't he be invincible? How can it be that easy to hatch a calamity-grade companion egg? If I'm not careful, I might even lose my life. You are right. If Holy Pirate cannot hatch it in a short amount of time, I am afraid he will be in great danger. I think a lot of powerful guys are already on the move. As long as it does not hatch, Holy Pirate will not have peace. It's no longer a problem of peace. I'm afraid I won't have the life to hatch the companion egg. In fact, just as most people had guessed, many factions had already begun tracking Lu Yun's whereabouts. They all knew that a calamity-grade companion egg wasn't that easy to hatch. As long as they could kill Holy Pirate before it hatched, the companion egg would be theirs. Who wouldn't be tempted by a calamity-grade companion egg? Even in the dimension, a calamity-grade was already an overlord. Apart from Human Emperor, they had never heard of a second human with a calamity-grade companion beast. Lu Yun wasn't stupid, so he immediately used interstellar teleportation to leave Venus. After returning to Earth, he plunged into the uninhabited desert. At that moment, Lu Yun was extremely excited. It was a calamity-grade companion egg. As long as he could hatch it, Lu Yun, would be an invincible existence on Earth. The League of Defender and the Holy Spirit Society would have to step aside. As for the agreement to cooperate with Zhou, Lu Yun threw it out of his mind. He definitely couldn't let Zhou have any chance of coming into contact with such a good item. When I, Lu Yun, am born, it will be the time for the world to change. Lu Yun also knew that now wasn't the time to be happy. He had to quickly escape to a safe place. The temptation of a calamity-grade companion egg was just too great. He reckoned that the League of Defender and the Holy Spirit Society had already taken action. Even the 6 families might have sent people to snatch the companion egg. He had to find a safe place first and think of a way to hatch the companion egg. What type of companion beast will it be? From the looks of the dragon armor, it should be an armor type, right? Lu Yun was already imagining himself wearing the dragon turtle armor and facing a group of experts who came to hunt him down. He would stand steadily with his hands behind his back like an old dog. No matter how exhausted they were, they wouldn't be able to harm a single strand of his hair. Instead, they would be repelled to death. The nickname Holy Thief isn't for nothing. In the future, when I wear the calamity armor to rob people, all I need to do is stand at the entrance of the 6 families. Won't they obediently deliver the benefits to me? Why would I need to be sneaky? As a thief, I need to have a thief's crime. I'm a role model among thieves, a gentleman among thieves, an elegant and charming holy thief. Lu Yun's saliva nearly dripped down the corner of his mouth. He imagined the scene of thousands of beautiful girls being infatuated with him. A single glance from him could make those beautiful girls faint from excitement. With a pen in hand, I have the world. Lu Yun subconsciously touched the jade ball in his arms. With this touch, his expression changed drastically as he stuttered. What's going on? How did it turn into stone? Lu Yun threw the stone ball in his arms to the ground. The stone ball shattered the moment it landed. It was clearly an ordinary stone. So how could it be a companion egg? What's this? Where's my companion egg? Where's my egg? Lu Yun was dumbfounded as he looked at the shattered stone ball on the ground. Soon, Lu Yun reacted and immediately knew what had happened. That bastard Zhou tricked me again. An extremely angry roar resounded in the wilderness, scaring the small animals in the surroundings into hiding. Flocks of wild birds scattered in all directions. He had paid such a huge price and even used the only quicksand substitute statue he had. But all he got was this crappy thing. Zhou had also returned to Earth. He was also hugging a ball in his arms. It was the jade ball that the dragon turtle had spewed out. When he first touched the jade ball, he had already left a mark on it. The reason he didn't immediately use the sky-stealing sun-swapping technique to take it back and instead let Lu Yun take it away was because he was afraid that the dimensional creatures in the sect would first attack the person who snatched the jade ball. Just as he had expected, Lu Yun was beaten up first. Eldest senior brother, you were the one who wanted to snatch it. You can't blame me. Zhou hugged the jade ball and found it more pleasing to the eye the more he looked at it. He wished he could hug it and kiss it. This was a calamity-grade treasure. Perhaps he would have a true calamity-grade companion beast, not a disobedient, defective one like Truth Listener. Come on, baby. Let me see your stats. Zhou took out his phone and took a picture of the jade ball. Chapter 1236. What's going on? Zhou held his phone and aimed it at the jade ball. He took a 360-degree shot, but the phone didn't react at all. Zhou immediately realized that something was amiss. If it was a companion egg, the phone would have long reacted and could have been stored in-game. Now that the phone didn't react at all, there was only one possibility. This thing wasn't a companion egg. It can't be. Zhou looked at the jade ball gloomily. He had taken such a huge risk and spent so much effort to obtain it, but it wasn't a companion egg. What the hell is this thing? Since it was spat out by a calamity-grade dragon turtle before it died, even if it's not a companion egg, it should be something good, right? Zhou carefully studied it for a while, but failed to figure it out. From afar, it looked like a ball. Up close, it looked like a ball. After fiddling with it for a long time, it was still a ball. It didn't have the ability to release energy, nor did it have any special reaction. It was like a dead object. Could this be a stone in the dragon turtle's stomach? It got stuck in its throat before it died and was spat out. Zhou had an odd expression. He began to suspect if the jade ball was useful. He looked around and saw that this was a mountainous area. There weren't many creatures around, so it was considered safe. Therefore, he released Ice Maiden, Jade Rabbit, and Demonic Neonate. Ice Maiden, take a look at what this is. Joan pointed to the jade ball and asked Ice Maiden. Ice Maiden glanced at the jade ball on the ground, but ignored Joan. She looked like she didn't want to bother with him. It was unknown if she recognized what it was. Joan knew that Ice Maiden was definitely very unhappy. She had been trapped for 5 years and hadn't had the chance to come out recently. If it were Joan, he would definitely be very unhappy. Don't you want to see the Demon God Bloodline catalog? I can tell you where it is. Joan threw out the bait. Do you think I'll believe you? Ice Maiden curled her lips and said disdainfully, I've always been a man of my word. I was trapped for 5 years the last time. That can't be helped. Joan paused before saying, in order to express my sincerity, I can tell you that the Demon God Bloodline catalog is in Chess Mountain. If you are confident, you can enter the mountain to take a look yourself. Chess Mountain? You're not lying to me? Ice Maiden sized up Joan suspiciously. After she came to Earth, although she had been enslaved by Joan, she hadn't been idle. She had used her phone and the internet to gain a lot of understanding of Earth. Joan had mentioned Chess Mountain many times. Ice Maiden vaguely felt that Joan was somewhat afraid of it. A place that even Joan paled at the mention of was definitely abnormally dangerous. The reason I didn't tell you in the past was because it's too dangerous. Even if you were at the terror grade, the chances of you living to see the Demon God Bloodline catalog aren't high. Therefore, I thought that when I have the strength, I'll bring you along. Joan comforted the Ice Maiden. Whatever you say now is useless. I don't know what it is. Although Ice Maiden didn't quite believe Joan's words and was skeptical, she still glanced at the jade ball in Joan's hand. Joan was somewhat disappointed. If even Ice Maiden didn't know what it was, it would be difficult to know what it was. It's fine. I keep my word. When I have enough strength to enter Chess Mountain, I'll definitely take you to see the Demon God Bloodline catalog, Joan said. What's in Chess Mountain? Ice Maiden asked. Joan told Ice Maiden some of the Thearch's deeds. As what he said was the truth, Ice Maiden knew that Joan wasn't lying after listening for a while. There were some things that humans at Joan's level couldn't know. They had definitely seen them before. You're saying that the Tharch can use the power of wishes to change your body from thousands of kilometers away and turn you into another species. Ice Maiden asked Joan in shock. That's right. It's a complete transformation into another creature. My strength is completely gone, Joan said with a nod. Ice Maiden fell silent. After a while, she said, if it's really as you said, I'm afraid it's impossible for us to barge in to see the Demon God Bloodline catalog. Why? Joan hurriedly asked as he had some guesses. If the Tharch really has that kind of power, even if the kings of the eight come together, they might not be able to obtain the upper hand, much less us, Ice Maiden said with a heavy expression. Are you saying that the Tharch might be at the Apocalypse grade? Joan was somewhat shocked. He originally guessed that the Tharch might be at the peak of the Calamity grade. It was unlikely that an Apocalypse grade would appear on Earth. However, from the Ice Maiden's expression, it seemed like she thought so. Ice Maiden shook her head slightly. It's hard to say, but a creature with such power is definitely not an ordinary Calamity grade. After a pause, Ice Maiden said, Is there no other way to enter Chess Mountain? At least I don't have a solution now, Joan said as he spread out his hands. Seeing that Ice Maiden really didn't seem to know what the jade ball was, Joan got Demonic Neonate to summon Grim Demon. Old Grim, do you know what this is? Joan pointed at the jade ball and asked Grim Demon. Grim Demon looked around before shaking his head and saying, I don't know. Do you think this might be a companion egg? Joan asked again, unwilling to give up. Are you crazy? How could such a stone be a companion egg? Grim Demon looked at Joan as though he was looking a lunatic who had gone crazy from thinking about money. Joan was greatly disappointed. This thing didn't seem to be as valuable as he imagined. Demonic Neonate wasn't interested in the Jade Ball, and Jade Rabbit didn't react. Some of the main companion beasts didn't have any special feelings for the Jade Ball. Joan refused to give up. He summoned the companion beasts he didn't often use to see if there was any reaction to the Jade Ball. He was treating a dead horse as a living one. Those companion beasts basically didn't have any evolvable stats, nor did they need to eat. Even the evolvable companion beasts didn't have any reaction. So how could they have any reaction? Zhou summoned the Seven Seas Dragon King, but there was still no reaction. It was as though the jade was really useless trash. At this point, Zhou had already given up. He planned on putting the jade ball into the chaos ball to keep it as a trump card. However, to his surprise, the summoned Galaxy Shell Dragon suddenly appeared in front of the jade ball. Its lobster-like body bent down and used many tiny claws to hug the jade ball. Its body also curled into a ball and wrapped the jade ball tightly. Chapter 1237. The way the shrimp hugged the ball reminded Zhou one of the shrimp tail ball that Ouyang Lan had once treated him to. The Galaxy Shell Dragon hugged the jade ball motionlessly as though it was dead. It didn't respond to Zhou when summoned and returned to him. Seeing the Galaxy Shell Dragon in this state, Zhou placed it into the Chaos Bead. Anyway, I don't know what use that jade ball has. If the Galaxy Shell Dragon can evolve once with it, it'll be worth it. Zhou thought to himself, if the Galaxy Shell Dragon could advance to the Calamity grade, he would make a killing. Although the Galaxy Shell Dragon wasn't as powerful as the Dragon Turtle, its absolute defense was also a very powerful Wheel of Destiny. If its level was raised, it would be a very powerful helper. Zhou also knew that it probably wasn't that easy to advance to the Calamity grade. However, it would be very useful if it could advance to the Terror grade. If absolute defense could be constantly activated, its defense would likely be at the top of the Terror grade. Zhou looked into the Chaos Bead again and saw that the Shell Dragon hugged the jade ball as though it was dead. There was still no movement, nor were there any special changes. It was unknown if it was evolving. Seeing that the situation wouldn't change anytime soon, Zhou decided to ignore it. He first found a place with cell phone reception to see what the situation was like. Zhou was immediately amused when he saw it. Lu Yun had now become a rat on the streets. Everyone wanted to beat him up. The various factions were searching for his whereabouts. Someone even offered a reward online. Anyone who could provide clues to God Thief's location would be rewarded with an epic companion egg. If they could lead them to God Thief himself, they could even obtain a mythical companion egg. This was just providing clues without needing to take any risks. The reward was already so generous. It was obvious how tempting a Calamity grade companion egg was. The entire Earth was probably searching for Lu Yun. If anything went wrong, God Thief's reputation would be ruined and he might even die. This was a consequence Zhou hadn't expected. However, Lu Yun had already advanced to the Terror grade and was good at spatial teleportation. It wasn't easy to capture him. As long as he hid in the endless sea of stars, few people would be able to find him. When can I learn Eldest Senior Brother's Star Stealer? It's just too useful. Zhou was somewhat helpless. He hadn't been able to drop the Star Stealer skill crystal. Even if it dropped, the Star Stealer skill's level wasn't high. It wasn't easy to reach Lu Yun's level. And in Family Mansion, Ye was squatting in the garden, looking down at the ants. An officer-like person came to Ye-Er's side and squatted down. He smiled and said to Ye-Er, Miss Ye-Er, the overseer asked me to take you to eat delicious food. Ye-Er ignored the officer and didn't even raise her head. She was still looking at the ants on the ground. Miss Ye-Er, let's leave quickly. Don't keep the overseer waiting, the officer urged again. Only then did Ye-Er stand up and turn to size up the officer. The officer smiled and said, the overseer has prepared a lot of delicious food for you. Let's go quickly. You're lying, Ye-Er said slowly. The officer's expression changed slightly, but he immediately returned to normal. He said with a smile, Monsieur, stop joking. The overseer is still waiting for you. However, Ye-Er said calmly, Uncle always sends the things over or takes me there himself. He won't get anyone else to do it for him, much less get a stranger I don't know to pick me up. I'm the overseer's staff officer, adjutant, and happen to be busy today. So he got me to pick you up, the officer explained. That's even more impossible. If you were really sent by Uncle, you should know that Uncle never urges me. He will wait quietly until I want to go, he said. Translator, Exodus Tales editor. Exodus Tales. The officer's expression turned ugly, but he still forced a smile and explained, I already said that today is a special situation. The overseer has an important meeting later. Time is tight. If that's the case, Uncle wouldn't have gotten you to come. He's the kind of person who can tolerate everything, but he won't let anyone make things difficult for him, Yer said. The officer was already somewhat flustered. He didn't have much time. While Tianzua and Sheng were out and Ouyang wasn't home, he had to take Yer out. He couldn't wait any longer. Gritting his teeth, the officer reached out to grab Yer's arm, hoping to forcefully take her away. However, just as the officer's hand moved, he heard a gunshot. His arm was pierced through as blood spewed out. The officer held his wound and turned his head to look. His face immediately turned pale. The slender Tianzua was already standing at the entrance of the garden. He was dressed in a military uniform with a military coat draped over him. He held a pistol in his hand, and the muzzle was still smoking as he looked at him coldly. Overseer, the officer's legs were trembling as though he had lost all his strength. He couldn't even stand steadily. Why? Tianzua asked the officer. Overseer, I'm sorry. I was forced into a corner. If I wasn't cornered, I wouldn't have done anything to let you down. Please give me another chance on account of the times I risked my life with you in the past. The officer knelt down with a thud. Can you live if I spare you? Tianzua said expressionlessly. The officer immediately froze. If he was forced into a corner, even if Tianzua spared him, only death awaited him. If Tianzua spared him, he would still have a way out. That meant that he wasn't forced into a corner. Tianzua walked towards Yer. When he passed by the officer, he placed the gun in his hand and said indifferently, It's up to you whether you live or die. Then, he continued walking towards Yer. The officer raised the gun and aimed it at his head, but the moment he pulled the trigger, he turned the muzzle and aimed it at Tianzua's back. Pa! 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 The officer fired 3 times, but the gun didn't fire. There were only the sounds of the firing pin. There were no bullets in the gun. At that instant, the officer's face was filled with complicated expressions of shock, puzzlement, shame, and shame. Tianzua didn't turn his head as he gently carried Yer and walked towards the garden's door. After walking past the officer, Tianzua said indifferently, You've been with me for so long. When have you ever seen me let Yer see blood? The officer stood there in a daze. His body trembled, and his lips trembled. He couldn't even say a word. He knew that he had personally destroyed his last chance. After Tianzua carried Yer out of the garden, he covered her ears with a black leather glove. A gunshot sounded from the garden before everything returned to silence. How many times has it been this month? Tianzua released his hand that covered Yer's ears and asked Sheng. By the side, Sheng replied with a helpless expression, It's the 8th time, and it's also the most dangerous time. I never expected that even Staff Officer Zhao, whom you groomed, would be bribed by the enemy. He even attempted to attack Yer. He's really unscrupulous. It's time to do something and let them know that I, Tianzua, am still alive, Tianzua said as he walked with Yer in his arms. Overseer, what do you want to do? Just give me your orders. Sheng stood up as a terrifying killing intent flashed in his eyes. Chapter 1238. Just as the entire nation was pursuing Holy Thief, a piece of news suddenly exploded like an atomic bomb. The Sunset Army had captured Holy Thief and had secretly escorted him to Luoyang. Zhou couldn't help but be stunned when he heard the news. He hurriedly rushed back to Luoyang. Although he didn't have a good relationship with Tianzua, his father and many close people were in Luoyang. He couldn't let anything happen to them. Zhou knew very well how attractive calamity-grade companion egg was. Even when he first discovered the jade ball, he immediately rushed in to take the risk. Now, Tianzua had actually captured Lu Yun, the scapegoat who hadn't obtained anything. Wasn't this just asking for trouble? Countless ruthless people in the Federation were eyeing the jade ball that wasn't a calamity-grade companion egg. This way, Luoyang immediately became a target of public criticism. If it wasn't handled well, it might even bring destruction to the Yin family. By the time Zhou Wen rushed back to Luoyang, the situation in Luoyang was already very complicated. The streets were filled with people from outside, and there were almost no locals. The Yin family surroundings were being watched by countless people. Sheng, what's going on? Zhou Wen didn't dare ask Sheng about this over the phone. After returning to Luoyang, he immediately went to find Sheng. Young Master Wen, let's talk when we get back. It's not safe here. Sheng took Zhou Wen to the Yin family. On the way, many eyes were staring at them. Zhou Wen had no choice but to remain silent. When he arrived at the Yin family, he realized that the entire Yin family had been guarded like an iron bucket. Not even a mosquito could fly in. Young Master Wen, things are a little troublesome. There are all sorts of people outside. All the factions with some ability have come to Luoyang. I'm afraid it will be very troublesome this time. Sheng said, "Where's in Tianzhua?" Zhou Wen scanned the area and realized that Ouyang Lan and Ye were there, but there was no sign of Tianzhua. As for Zhou Lingfeng, he had left Luoyang due to some work matters. He hadn't returned and wasn't in the overseer's office. The overseer isn't here. Sheng whispered to Zhou Wen, "As long as those fellows outside don't see the overseer and what they're looking for, they won't dare act rashly." Has he never thought that those people would use Sis Lan and your lives to threaten him? Or could it be that he had long thought of this but still did it? Zhou Wen frowned. Young Master Wen, the overseer is definitely not such a person. He has his reasons for doing so. Please believe in the overseer, Sheng said solemnly. Just as Zhou Wen was about to say something, a soldier came in to report that someone was trying to forcefully enter the overseer's office. Young Master Wen, rest first. I'll take a look, Sheng said as he stood up. I'll go with you. Zhou Wen was somewhat helpless. Yeah, and Ouyang Lan were here. With Sheng here, how could he stay out of it if a conflict really broke out? All right, Sheng smiled. When the two of them arrived at the gate, they saw a group of people who looked like officials standing at the gate. The soldiers guarding the military governor's office were aiming their guns at those people. Upon seeing Sheng come out, the leader of the officials said, "Adjutant, I'm the director of the Federal Security Bureau, Smith. On orders from the Senate, I need to ask Overseer some questions. I hope Overseer can assist in the investigation." Sorry, the Overseer isn't in the manor. Everyone, come again another day. Sheng had dealt with many similar situations in the past 2 days, so he casually dismissed them. I wonder when Overseer will return? Smith's expression didn't change as he asked calmly. As subordinates, we only know how to follow orders. How would we dare ask about longevity? Sheng said perfunctorily. In that case, let's wait in the manor for Overseer N's return, Smith said as he led his men into the manor. The soldiers guarding the manor immediately raised their guns and pulled the safety pin, prepared to shoot at them at any moment. Mr. Smith, I'm afraid this isn't appropriate, right? Sheng said to Smith. Smith faced the black muzzles, but he didn't show any signs of panic. He remained calm as he said, Luoyang is the League's Luoyang, and Overseer is also the League's Overseer. Could it be that you are going to defy the orders of the League's Senate? Sorry, we are only soldiers. We only know how to obey our superior's orders. The Overseer asked us to guard the manor, so we can't let anyone in, not even a fly. Mr. Smith, if you have anything to say, please wait for the Overseer to return before discussing it with him. Don't make things difficult for ordinary soldiers like us. Sheng said, it doesn't matter if he returns or not. This is a search warrant from the Senate. Unless you want to betray the League, get out of the way. After Smith showed the search warrant, he barged in. Zhou Wen could tell that these people were clearly forcing Sheng and company to take action. The so-called Senate was basically controlled by the League of Defender. And the League of Defender had long viewed the Yin family in Luoyang as a thorn in their side. It wasn't unimaginable that they would use this opportunity to destroy the Yin family. After all, the Yin family had never accepted the olive branch offered by the League of Defender. They even vaguely made enemies of the Guardians. Bam! Sheng held his pistol and fired at the tip of Smith's foot, causing Smith and company to pause for a moment. Then, he coldly ordered, All soldiers, listen up. Anyone who takes another step forward will be immediately shot on the spot." The soldiers answered loudly without any hesitation. Their eyes were firm as their fingers were already placed on the trigger. They were just waiting for someone to take another step forward before they would immediately shoot. People say that the family is colluding with overseas forces and wants to betray the League. I didn't believe it first, but from the looks of it, I have no choice but to believe it, Smith said coldly. And Shung smiled and said, "Speaking of colluding with overseas forces, everyone should be investigating the League of Defender, right? Yusuji now, there is a famous demoness in the outer seas. I hope everyone can apprehend her as soon as possible." A cold glint flashed in Smith's eyes as he stared at Shung and said word by word, "The family must be searched today. If you want to betray the League, feel free to shoot." With that said, Smith continued walking forward with his men. Zhou looked at Shung. This wasn't an ordinary matter. It wasn't something that could be resolved with force. It involved the relationship between Luoyang's and family and the League, so it wasn't appropriate for him to take action casually. And Shung seemed somewhat hesitant. Although the gun in his hand was aimed at Smith, he didn't immediately fire. "Take them all down." A cold voice suddenly sounded. On the long street, and Tianzhua, dressed in a neat military uniform, rode a white, jade-like Qilin beast. Behind him were many famous generals of the Sunset Army. Even Qin Wufu was among them. Chapter 1239. No one expected Tianzhua to be so unyielding. Everyone knew that Smith and company were just pawns sent by the League of Defender to probe. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that they were cannon fodder. Touching them wouldn't affect the League of Defender in any way, but in that case, the family would be accused of rebelling against the Federation. This was clearly not worth it, but Tianzhua didn't hesitate to take down everyone. Those who wanted to escape were even killed on the spot. Even the spies of the various families weren't spared. Then, all of Luoyang was sealed off. None of the outsiders who came to Luoyang were able to escape. All the information in Luoyang was cut off in a short period of time. Instantly, Luoyang became a blind spot. No one knew what was happening in Luoyang. Originally, many people were still doubtful. They wondered if Tianzhua had really caught Holy Pirate. After all, the news was too sudden. Now, many people reacted, and Tianzhua's actions were most likely because he had really captured God Thief. He was trying to escape. If he hadn't obtained the Calamity-grade companion egg, how could Tianzhua risk the world and be willing to bear the name of a traitor and become enemies with the entire Federation? This was equivalent to sending himself to his death without leaving any room for negotiation. Not only would the family not obtain any benefits from this, but they would also be targeted by the entire Federation. They might even face annihilation. This was simply throwing his life away. No one would be so foolish. The only reasonable explanation was that Tianzhua had really obtained the Calamity-grade companion egg, so he was going all out. All he needed to do was incubate the companion egg and return as a king. When that happened, no one would be able to do anything to him. He might even rule the world. The hermit in charge of this matter immediately thought of this possibility. He immediately secretly ran to Luoyang to investigate the situation, but he realized that the family was already empty. There were only a few commoners and people from Sunset College left in Luoyang. As they had left in a hurry, many of the troops belonging to the Sunset Army hadn't been transferred away in time. However, officers like Qin Wufu had already disappeared. Even the primordial gold mine was left unattended. Without a leader, all of Luoyang was in chaos. Damn it, it's actually true. Upon seeing this situation, how could the hermit imagine that Tianzhua had really obtained the Calamity-grade companion egg and had already fled? I have to find him as soon as possible. The hermit knew that it was pointless for him to catch up to Tianzhua on his own. Ignoring the fact that Tianzhua was one of the 4 gods of war of the new era, his strength was unfathomable. Coupled with the many experts in the Sunset Army and Zhou, it was useless even if he caught up to Tianzhua. Hermit immediately contacted the headquarters of the League of Defender. Unfortunately, Immortal was not at the headquarters. Cave Era was in charge of the League of Defender now. Cave Era, the possibility of Entienzwa obtaining the Dragon Turtle Companion Egg is very high. We can still make it in time if we chase after him now. I'm afraid it will be too late if we delay any longer. The hermit's meaning was obvious. He needed reinforcements. Cave Era frowned and said, "What do you want to do?" "You will need the help of you and the Blood Shaman," the hermit said. "Immortal isn't around. I have to stay at the headquarters. It's impossible for me to leave. Blood Shaman and Shangshan are in charge of the construction of the heaven-reaching tower, so they can't leave," said Cave Era. "It's fine to leave the heaven-reaching tower to Shangshan. Blood Shaman has to go. Zhouwen has too many companion beasts. Coupled with Entienzwa and the Sunset Army, only Blood Shaman can restrain them." Hermit paused for a moment before continuing, "A calamity-grade companion egg. I'm afraid there won't be another opportunity like this in the future. Even if we don't snatch it, the 6 families won't let it go. If they obtain it, I believe you know the consequences better than me. Even if the 6 families don't succeed, will Entienzwa let the matter rest after he incubates the calamity-grade companion beast? All right, I can get Blood Shaman to help you." The temptation of a calamity-grade companion beast was just too great. Cave Era finally relented. "I still need to transfer a group of elites from the Alliance, especially those who are good at tracking and reconnaissance. We have to find Entienzwa as soon as possible," said the hermit. "We can only succeed this time. Failure is not allowed," Cave Era said in a deep voice. "Just in case, I hope you can leave a time mark on Blood Shaman. It's best if you don't use it. If there's a need, I'll need you to help me. We have to successfully obtain the Dragon Turtle Companion Egg this time." The hermit still made plans for the worst. Entienzwa's name was just too famous. The Federation was huge, and there were as many families as there were hairs on a cow. There were very few people who could truly reach Entienzwa's level and even fight the 6 families. If it wasn't for the fact that Sunset College's Lung Zongjing hadn't escaped with Entienzwa, the hermit wouldn't have been able to guarantee that he could snatch the Dragon Turtle Companion Egg back, even with so many reinforcements. Cave Era knew that this operation was of great significance, so she didn't dare be careless. Just as the hermit had said, she left a time mark on Blood Shaman. If needed, she could arrive at Blood Shaman's side at any time. Many of the Alliance's elites were gathered. Under Blood Shaman's lead, they used the teleportation passageway established within the Alliance and quickly arrived near Luoyang to meet up with the hermit. After Blood Shaman met up with the hermit, he immediately began tracking Entienzwa and company. Many guardians with special abilities quickly found clues that should not have existed. A group of people chased after them without stopping. "Lord Hermit, it shouldn't be wrong. Entienzwa and company should have fled in the direction of Mount Laojun," a guardian said after carefully observing his surroundings. "Entienzwa is indeed cunning. Even if we chase him to Mount Laojun, there's a taboo power there. We can't use force to kill. It won't be easy to capture him," Blood Shaman said. However, the hermit sneered and said, "That might not be the case. The taboo power of Mount Laojun is indeed terrifying, but we don't need to kill on it." Under the hermit's lead, the group arrived at Mount Laojun. From the looks of it, Entienzwa has done too much to hide his whereabouts. The people from his 6 families haven't caught up. Blood Shaman looked around Mount Laojun and didn't discover anyone from the other families. "Are you sure they're on the mountain?" the hermit asked the guardian beside him. "There's no mistake. They must be on the mountain. Although they have erased their auras and cut off all traces, they can't hide from my senses. They have been here before," the guardian said with certainty. "Let's go up the mountain." The hermit was very confident in the guardian's abilities. He immediately led him up the mountain and soon arrived in front of the wordless monument. They didn't see anyone here, so everyone continued walking up the mountain. When they were about to reach Golden Peak, they finally saw many people gathered on the nearby stone steps and stone platforms. It was Entienzwa and company. Among them were Smith and the missing spies from the various families. Chapter 1240. Overseer, how have you been? The hermit's gaze swept past Zhou, one, and finally landed on Entienzua's face. Although there were many powerhouses in the family, there were only two that he cared about. It's an honor for the two heavenly kings of the League of Defender to come together, Entienzua said with a smile. It's only right. He's overseer, after all. The hermit looked at Smith and company. Seeing that they were only chained up and in good condition, he continued. From the looks of it, overseer, you aren't bent on betraying the Federation. Why don't we do this? You can return with us and explain things to the Senate. There's no need to go to war over a misunderstanding. What do you think, Overseer? Are we going to the Federation Parliament or the Alliance Parliament? And Tianzua asked. It looks like the Overseer is bent on being an enemy of the Federation. The hermit's expression changed slightly. Everyone knew that only the Federation had a parliament. How could there be an Alliance Parliament? And Tianzua's words were clearly mocking the Alliance for secretly manipulating the federal parliament. Aren't you here for Holy Thief and that dragon turtle companion egg? If I told you that I didn't capture Holy Thief, much less obtain the dragon turtle companion egg, would you believe me? And Tianzua said slowly, Overseer, you must be joking. If I didn't get it, why would I go through all this trouble? A smart person like Overseer wouldn't play around with the lives of the family, right? The hermit naturally didn't believe him. Of course I'm not fooling around. I don't like fooling around either. It's just that you guys always like to fool around with me. You always make people I don't like to fool around with me at times I don't like. And Tianzua looked at the hermit and said, Therefore, I have to do something to let you all know that I'm not someone who likes to fool around, lest there be any misunderstandings. At this point in time, the hermit didn't deny anything. He only lightly said, Then, Overseer, what do you plan on doing to let those people know that you don't like to fool around? Tell them louder. I don't like to play around. And Tianzua said seriously. I'm afraid words won't work, the hermit said. Who knows? It might be useful. And Tianzua said, Overseer, if you wish to say something, you can say it at the council. There are people there who are very willing to listen to you. If you can move them, it might really be useful, said the hermit. What if I don't go? And Tianzua asked. This is our duty, the hermit said solemnly. I've long heard that the four heavenly kings of the League of Defender are all invincible, and I've wanted to see them for a long time. And Tianzua remained calm. If Overseer is interested, I'm willing to accompany you at the foot of Mount Laojun. Unless absolutely necessary, the hermit didn't wish to fight on Mount Laojun. Sure, and Tianzua said and actually walked down the stairs. The hermit and blood shaman were slightly stunned. They looked at each other and saw that Tianzua had already walked down. They could only retreat down the mountain. Stay here and wait for me. And Tianzua instructed and stopped the Sunset Army from following him down the mountain. Then he walked down the mountain alone. Although the hermit and blood shaman were somewhat puzzled as to why Tianzua would give up such a favorable environment like Mount Laojun to follow them down the mountain alone, this was clearly very beneficial to them. There was no reason not to accept it. Zhou was also somewhat puzzled. He didn't know what Tianzua was up to, but Sheng wasn't beside him, so he couldn't find anyone to ask. All he could do was whisper to Ouyang Lan, who was hugging her. Sis Lan, what's going on? Zhou had already realized that something was amiss. He began to believe in Tianzua's words. Perhaps Tianzua really hadn't captured Lu Yun. This was because he knew very well that Lu Yun didn't have a dragon turtle companion egg. Even if Tianzua captured Lu Yun, it was impossible for him to obtain the companion egg. However, he didn't understand why Tianzua was doing this. The consequence of doing so was that everyone in the world believed that he had obtained a companion egg. Could it be that he wants to lure all the people from the League of Defender over and wipe them out in one fell swoop? Zhou felt that Tianzua would only think so if he was crazy. Ignoring the fact that the League of Defender was extremely powerful, apart from the four heavenly kings, there were still many Terra Grade experts. With only Tianzua at the Terra Grade, the family had no chance of winning. Even if there was a chance of winning, the Dimension was backing the League of Defender. When the time came, if the Dimension really wanted to destroy the family at all costs, it wouldn't be too difficult to produce more Terra Grade Guardians. Zhou had heard from Sheng that the reason why the League of Defender had so many Terragray Guardians wasn't because all of them came from the Guardian cocoons. Many Guardians were sent over from the dimension using special means. Then, the League of Defender would choose suitable humans to contract with. After all, Guardians were created by the dimension, so it wasn't difficult to create more. However, the Guardians sent over by the dimension seemed to have some flaws. In comparison, they were also at the Terragrade, but they couldn't compare to Guardians that had grown up on Earth. Even so, it was already very terrifying. After all, the Terragrade was the Terragrade. Only the Terragrade could match it. It was already the top combat strength on Earth. For example, among the Guardians brought by Blood Shaman and Hermit, there were 7 to 8 Terragrade experts. Even Zhou didn't dare underestimate such Terragrade combat strength. I don't know. Littleswood didn't say, but don't worry. Littleswood knows his limits. He naturally has his plans, Ouyang Lan said. Why would I be worried about him? I'm worried about you, Zhou said. Ouyang Lan smiled and said, it's all the same. Blood Shaman and Hermit found it unbelievable that Tianzhua had really followed them down the mountain alone. Even Zhou hadn't come down with him. Overseer, since you have such boldness and magnanimity, I'll warm up with you. Hermit glanced at Blood Shaman, indicating that he was ready to attack at any moment. All of you, attack together. As Tianzhua spoke, he had already summoned the strange life soul to fuse with him. His slender figure was wrapped in white metal armor. On his back was a blood-colored cloak that fluttered like a blood-colored rainbow. He held a broadsword on his shoulder in one hand and a gatling in the other. He looked indescribably domineering. Zhou was also watching Tianzhua. He had yet to see Tianzhua's true strength. The last time Tianzhua fought Xiao, he had already lost an arm. His combat strength had been greatly affected, so it wasn't his true strength. Since Overseer is so interested, we can only accompany you to the end. Hermit didn't stand on ceremony as he gestured for Blood Shaman to attack. He vaguely felt that something was amiss and became somewhat worried. He planned on ending the battle quickly and taking down Tianzhua first. Chapter 1241. Blood Shaman directly transformed into his terror form and used the power he was best at. Wherever the blood-colored halo enveloped, no one could summon their companion beast to fight. Hermit condensed a crystal and prepared to join forces with Blood Shaman to attack Tianzhua. Hermit had even sent out a secret signal to get all the Guardians to attack together. However, while they were still thinking about attacking, the gatling in Tianzhua's hand had already begun firing crazily. The muzzle spewed out terrifying blue flames. Ta! 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 The bullets were like a roaring meteor shower, covering everyone in the blink of an eye. The speed of the shooting was too fast. The hermit's figure flashed like a ghost, evading the rain of bullets. However, Blood Shaman wasn't that fast. Sanguine light bloomed from his body as he punched the bullets, hoping to send them flying. Clang! The bullets hit Blood Shaman's fist, shattering the armor on his fist. At the same time, Blood Shaman's body retreated as he raised his arms uncontrollably. The bullets that followed landed on his body, forcing Blood Shaman to retreat step by step. His feet cracked the ground, and the armor on his body shattered one after another. Charred bullet holes appeared on it. Some of the Guardians behind dodged in panic, while others used their own strength to block. Some Guardians used their shields to block the bullets and were forced to retreat. Some dodged the bullets, but some Guardians failed to dodge. Their bodies were blasted apart by the bullets, causing blood and organs to explode all over the ground. The mythical Guardians' armor shattered. The humans inside had no chance of survival. Their lives were as fragile as paper. In just an instant, all the mythical Guardians were killed. One Terragray Guardian was killed, and 3 to 4 were injured. The rest were more or less in a sorry state. What a domineering attack. Zhou was slightly surprised by Tianzhua's destructive power. Tianzhua with both hands was much stronger than Tianzhua with only one hand. The destructive power of the Gatling gun was something that ordinary weapons couldn't compete with. Hermit appeared behind Entienzwa like a ghost. At the same time, he flicked out an invisible crystal. The crystal was as tiny as a bacterium, but it condensed the full strength of a terrorgrade. If one didn't detect it and accidentally touched it or was invaded by it, even a terrorgrade would be blasted to death. However, as Entienzwa fired bullets crazily, it was as though he had eyes in the back of his head. He dodged the hermit's crystal and continued firing with a gatling in his hand. Bullets rained down on a guardian like a volcano, blasting the terrorgrade guardian's body apart in midair. On the other side, Blood Shaman rushed to Entienzwa's other side and punched at the back of Entienzwa's head with a strange bloody glow. Entienzwa didn't even turn his head as he slashed with the broadsword in his other hand and slashed at Blood Shaman's fist. He forcefully shattered Blood Shaman's violent fist force and repelled Blood Shaman. The Gatling gun, which was still rumbling, violently pushed back a terrorgrade guardian that was charging at him. The shield was filled with circular grooves formed by the bullets. The other terrorgrade guardians spread out and attacked Entienzwa from different directions. Entienzwa's expression was cold as his body moved rapidly. At the same time, he slashed with his broadsword and unleashed all the firepower of the Gatling gun. Despite being besieged, he still used his powerful firepower to suppress the attacks of Hermit and Blood Shaman. "Overseer, exterminate that bunch of grandsons," a candid officer shouted excitedly. However, more people couldn't see Entienzwa and company's battle. They didn't even have the ability to see the strength of the terrorgrade. Zhou naturally saw it clearly. Although he didn't like Entienzwa, he had to admit that Entienzwa wasn't like a person. He was more like a combat mecha. His every move seemed to have been calculated by a computer. He couldn't see any mistakes in battle. Even in such a high-intensity battle, he still couldn't find any mistakes. Hermit and Blood Shaman were alarmed and furious. So many guardians had attacked Entienzwa together, but they hadn't even touched the corner of Entienzwa's clothes. Now, only the two of them and the 5 terrorgrade guardians were left. Furthermore, they looked even more pathetic than Entienzwa. Blood Shaman was the most oppressed. He was best at restraining humans who relied on companion beasts, but Entienzwa didn't use any companion beast from beginning to end. He purely relied on his destructive power to suppress them. Hermit was secretly alarmed. Although he had long known that Entienzwa was very strong, he wouldn't have been rated as one of the 4 combat gods. He never expected him to be this strong. In terms of offensive strength, there weren't many at the terrorgrade who could match Entienzwa. What was unbearable was that not only did Entienzwa's offensive strength shoot through the roof, but his movement techniques and melee combat abilities were equally powerful. Hermit had tried to secretly attack Entienzwa several times, but he failed. Blood Shaman's melee attacks were repelled by Entienzwa's greatsword time and time again. Blood Shaman, let Cave Era come over. Her ability can restrain Entienzwa. Hermit couldn't care less. He had to take down Entienzwa as soon as possible. Blood Shaman also knew that they had underestimated the terror of the 4 combat gods. Without any hesitation, he activated the time mark that Cave Era had left on him. A clock mark lit up on Blood Shaman's forehead. The moment the clock mark separated from Blood Shaman's forehead, it strangely transformed into Cave Era's figure. Cave Era's expression turned ugly. She was just about to ask Blood Shaman why he was using the time mark when she had clearly told him not to use it unless it was absolutely necessary. However, before she could ask, the bullets that shot over made Cave Era know what had happened. Without any hesitation, Cave Era used the power of time. The bullets that shot over seemed to slow down as Cave Era slowly dodged the slow-flying bullets. Kill him. When Cave Era saw the situation clearly, she was equally shocked. Killing intent flashed in her eyes as she immediately activated the power of time. Her speed instantly accelerated to an unbelievable level as she arrived in front of Entienzwa and pointed at his forehead. Cave Era's ability was indeed restraining Entienzwa. At that speed, Entienzwa couldn't control the Gatling gun to fire. All he could do was retreat and use his greatsword to block the finger by a hair's breadth. However, Cave Era's finger didn't touch the greatsword at all. With another time acceleration, she circled behind Ntienzwa and pointed at the back of his head again. Ntienzwa swung the Gatling gun in his other hand and smashed it at Cave Era's head. He wanted to fight her with his life. How could Cave Era let him have his way? With a flash, she had already flashed to the other side of Ntienzwa. Hermit and Blood Shaman also attacked. Ntienzwa immediately fell into a precarious situation. It looked like the situation wasn't good. Uncle is in danger. Yeah. O looked at Zhou eagerly. Clearly, she wanted Zhou to save her. Chapter 1242. Little One. Although Ouyang Lan couldn't see the situation, she looked eagerly at Zhou when she heard Yaer's words. Zhou thought for a moment and said, I'll give a try. If Ntienzwa was killed, it would be their turn next. Zhou thought that he might as well take action now. At the very least, it would be easier. He only needed to deal with the grotto. The other Guardian's abilities weren't much of a threat to Ntienzwa. It was best to let Ntienzwa deal with it himself. Zhou had never liked killing. Zhou walked down Mount Laojun and was about to enter the battlefield when he suddenly frowned and quickly retreated. A ghost-like arrow brushed past the hair on Zhou's forehead and vanished mid-flight. Zhou turned his head and saw Xiao holding his bow with one hand. He casually grabbed at the air with his other hand, and an arrow appeared in his hand. He knocked the arrow on the bowstring and aimed it at Zhou. Little brother, can you not interrupt such an exciting performance? Xiao! Ouyang Lan exclaimed. She naturally knew how powerful Xiao was. Back then, Zhou and Ntienzwa had been present and had the upper hand, but they had failed to make Xiao stay. Beside Xiao stood two people. From their attitude, they weren't Zhao's subordinates. It was very likely that they were like Xiao, saints of the temple. Zhou couldn't be bothered to say anything as he summoned Sword Pill and held it in his hand. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? The arrow in Zhao's hand flew out like a ghost, forcing Zhou to dodge it. The other two saints also blocked Zhou's path to support Ntienzwa from different directions. Let me introduce you. This is Lei Bao, a saint of the Khanate Holy Temple. Xiao smiled as he pointed at a fellow wearing guardian armor. He wasn't tall, but his figure was horizontal, making him look like a tank. Lei Bao snorted coldly and didn't say a word. Xiao pointed at another saint with a relatively normal figure, but he was wearing a gorgeous golden armor that made him look like an emperor patrolling in grand attire. This is Saint Huang Quan of the Divine Emperor Temple. Huang Quan looked down at Zhou like an emperor looking at a slave. He said coldly, Xiao, I'm here to kill Ntienzwa. It's best you finish such a fella yourself. Brother Huang Quan, you mustn't underestimate him. His strength is not inferior to Ntienzwa's. I alone am not his match, so it's better for the three of us to attack together, said Xiao with a stern expression. Hearing Zhao's words, Huang Quan and Lei Bao both revealed looks of disdain. You saints of the Trajectory Holy Temple are best at avoiding the important and dwelling on the trivial. To need the three of us to join forces to deal with such a person, aren't you afraid of embarrassing yourselves? Huang Quan said disdainfully. Losing face is better than losing your life. Xiao didn't think much of it. From the looks of it, he would immediately leave once Huang Quan and Lei Bao left. He definitely wouldn't fight Zhou head-on. Fine, it won't take much time to deal with a nobody. Since Ntienzwa can't escape, I'll kill him first. It won't be too late to kill Ntienzwa later, Huang Quan said as he walked toward Zhou. With every step he took, the golden light on his body intensified. Although the light was intense, it wasn't scorching. It only had an indescribably powerful pressure. The Sunset Army officers watching the battle from the mountain seemed to be affected by some force despite being so far away. They had the urge to kneel down involuntarily. Thankfully, the officers who had followed Ntienzwa were all bigwigs in the military. All of them had reached the mythical stage, and their willpower had been tempered in war. Only then did they resist the urge to kneel down. Holy Emperor Body, isn't that a power unique to the Cape family? Could this person be from the Cape family? It doesn't look like it. He should be from the East District, right? An uninformed officer was secretly surprised. Zhou naturally knew that Huang Quan was definitely not from the Cape family, but a fellow from the Divine Emperor Temple. Zhou had always suspected that the secrets he had heard from the Dugu family seemed to be related to these saints. Zhou suspected that some of the orphans that Dugu Qinxiu had nurtured might have entered the Holy Temple and become saints. Otherwise, the spots to enter the Holy Land would be in the hands of the 6 families every year. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to enter, and the Holy Temple wouldn't have a chance to find suitable candidates. However, those orphans were different. If one of the orphans looked identical to the young people of the 6 families, they could replace them without anyone noticing and enter the Holy Land. Otherwise, saints like Xiao and Light definitely couldn't be nurtured overnight. It was impossible for the Holy Temple to randomly find someone to become a saint. However, this was only Zhouwen's guess. He couldn't be sure if the saints were related to the orphans that Dugu Qinxiu had nurtured. Now, Zhou wanted to know what the relationship between the Holy Temple and the League of Defender was. It didn't seem like they were on the same side. Cave Era and company were somewhat surprised by the arrival of Xiao and the other 2 saints. However, from Cave Era and company's reaction, Zhou felt that they didn't treat Xiao and company as enemies. They didn't have much hostility. This seemed to mean that the relationship between them wasn't that simple. At the very least, they were definitely not pure strangers. Huang Quan walked towards Zhou step by step. Not only was the power of royalty rising from his body, but even golden chains of light began to appear outside Zhouwen's body. The golden chains of light bound Zhouwen's body and gradually turned corporeal. Like shackles, they locked Zhouwen's body tightly. "Old Lei, let's attack together," Xiao said to Lei Bao. "There's no need. I alone am enough." However, Huang Quan rejected him arrogantly. As he got closer and closer to Zhou, the shackles on Zhouwen's body became more corporeal, and the restraints on his body became stronger. Zhou increasingly felt that these saints were like orphans. They were indeed very powerful, but they seemed to be lacking in personality. They seemed a little different from ordinary people. Zhou felt that it was very likely a result of growing up in such a special environment. He originally wanted to observe a little longer, but Huang Quan had already walked in front of him. He raised the golden sword condensed from golden light in his hand. The powerful power of royalty emitted from the golden sword was much stronger than when Xiao used the Holy Emperor body. Perhaps this is the difference between a professional and an amateur. As Zhou thought about it, Huang Quan had already slashed down. He wasn't in the mood to waste his breath on Zhou. One of the 4 combat gods, Zhan Tianzhua, was his true opponent. Naive child, Zhou sighed inwardly as he clenched sword pill in his hand. Chapter 1243. Just as the golden sword was about to slash at Zhou, he finally moved. The golden chains that bound Zhou were like rotting ropes. As Zhou slashed with his sword, they shattered and turned to dust. The sword formed by sword pill drew out a beautiful arc, but it was so fast that no one could react in time. Sword pill collided with the golden sword, but the blade didn't stop. It didn't even pause as it continued slashing forward. Clang! When Zhou retracted his sword, everyone heard the sound of a sword. They couldn't help but look at Huang Quan. As the strike was too fast, they couldn't see clearly if it had struck Huang Quan. Huang Quan stood there and didn't seem to be any injuries. He was still in the posture of slashing forward, and the golden sword was still intact. However, for some reason, Huang Quan stood there motionless, his eyes filled with horror. Suddenly, Huang Quan moved. No, it shouldn't be said that Huang Quan moved. It was more accurate to say that Huang Quan's body was sliding. Like an iceberg that cracked diagonally, the upper and lower halves of Huang Quan's body slowly slid apart. Even the golden sword was the same. The blade split in the middle. Huang Quan. Lei Bao looked at Huang Quan's corpse fall to the ground with a look of shock. Although Huang Quan wasn't the strongest among saints, he was definitely not weak. It was unimaginable that he had been killed by a human with a single strike when he had attacked first. Sigh, isn't it good to live well? Why aren't you obedient? Xiao Luo said with a sigh. Among the Sunset Army officers, those who had been to Netherworld City and hadn't seen Zhou Wen's prowess in Netherworld City wore dumbfounded looks. Compared to Tianzua's powerful firepower, Zhou Wen's strike gave them a unique sense of shock. Although it wasn't as ferocious as an all-out attack, it sent a chill down their spines. They felt goosebumps all over their bodies. Most people couldn't see Zhou Wen's strike, but the scene of Huang Quan's body appearing after he was killed and half of his body slowly slipping down was unforgettable. Zhou Wen glanced at Tianzua and saw that although Tianzua's situation was very dangerous, he wouldn't be killed immediately. He wasn't in a rush to rush over. On the other side, Cave Era and company were alarmed when they saw Zhou Wen kill Huang Quan with a single strike. Their attacks became even crazier. He had originally thought that Tianzua was already terrifying enough, but he never expected that there would be someone even more terrifying than him. If they couldn't finish Tianzua before Zhou Wen rushed over, they didn't dare imagine how terrifying the two of them would be if they joined forces. They didn't want to think about it, either. The pressure on Tianzua skyrocketed, and a few cuts appeared on his armor, causing blood to seep out. However, Tianzua's gaze remained as calm as ever. In a situation where he could be killed at any moment, he still had the mood to look at his watch. He was actually wearing a bracelet on his wrist. As he looked at the time, Tianzua dodged Cave Era's attack at the critical moment. At the same time, he said 10. No one knew what Tianzua meant. Why would he suddenly say such a number? 9. Tianzua continued as he fought. Only then did everyone realize that Tianzua was counting down. 8. Tianzua continued counting. Hermit and Blood Shaman didn't know why Tianzua was counting down, but they couldn't help but feel nervous when they heard Tianzua's voice. Their attacks became even more intense. Zhou Wen had already realized something, so he wasn't in a hurry to join the battle. Instead, he aimed his sword at Xiao and Lei Bao. Will you still escape this time? Zhou Wen asked Xiao. Even though his movement technique was superb, it would be very difficult to stop Xiao if he wanted to escape. Escape? How is that possible? As soon as Su finished speaking, his body suddenly drew a strange trajectory and flew backward like a ghost. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared without a trace. Only his voice was still echoing in the same place. This is called a tactical retreat. Zhou Wen was somewhat stunned, while Lei Bao was dumbfounded. 3 saints had besieged a young man, but one of them had been slain with one strike. The other had fled without fighting, leaving him in a daze. Before he came out, he never expected such a huge turn of events to happen in just over 10 seconds. The officers of the Sunset Army looked at Zhou Wen with strange expressions. Tianzua's strength was shocking, but Zhou Wen only left them feeling a chill down their spines. Just a moment ago, they believed that Zhou Wen had been besieged by 3 people, but now, they suddenly realized that it was Zhou Wen who had surrounded the 3 saints. They had been worried for Zhou Wen, worried that he would be besieged to death. But now, they suddenly felt that it was a pity that Xiao had escaped. Lei Bao gritted his teeth as the connate aura on his body transformed into the power of lightning. His surroundings were instantly drowned by lightning. He didn't have Zhao's speed, nor was he good at escaping, so he could only risk his life. Just as Lei Bao raised his fist, Zhou Wen's sword pill had already arrived in front of him. Wherever the blade passed, the lightning dissipated and Lei Bao's corpse collapsed. Young Master Wen, were the saints you killed really at the Terror Grade? An officer asked in puzzlement. Many officers had such doubts. Lei Bao and Huang Quan looked too weak. They didn't look like they were at the Terror Grade. Qin Wufu sighed and said, "It's not that the 2 saints don't look like they're at the Terror Grade, but that Zhou Wen doesn't look like a human." Everyone agreed. Many officers subconsciously nodded. Qin Wufu's words struck a chord in their hearts. "Governor Qin, why are you cursing?" Ouyang Lan was unhappy. If Zhou Wen wasn't human, what was she as his mother? Although Zhou Wen didn't participate in the battle with Tianzua, everything that happened here had a huge impact on the battle over there. Cave Era and the others originally wanted to finish Tianzua off before Zhou when rushed over. However, no one expected everything to happen so quickly. Of the 3 saints that suddenly appeared, 2 died and 1 escaped. Everything happened so quickly that they couldn't react at all. They even found it unbelievable. However, the moment Lei Bao collapsed, their fighting spirit plummeted to rock bottom. They knew very well that they no longer had a chance. Zhou Wen, who had been hiding in the family, was even more terrifying than in Tianzua. 3. And Tianzua's countdown was still going on like a soul-stirring curse. Now, the people from Cave Era were starting to regret coming after Tianzua. However, who would have thought that things would turn out like this? They wanted to retreat, but under Tianzua's terrifying firepower, it wasn't that easy to retreat. Cave Era and Hermit might have a way to retreat immediately, but once they retreated, the other Terragrade Guardians would definitely die. 2. Cave Era had already made up her mind to retreat, but she didn't carry it out immediately. She wanted to know what Tianzua's countdown meant. 1. Finally, Tianzua spat out the last number. Chapter 1244. As Tianzua said, 1. Blood Shaman and the other Guardians subconsciously retreated. No one attacked again. If it were anyone else counting down, they probably wouldn't care. However, it was completely different since it was Tianzua who was counting down. They still felt a little afraid. However, the moment they retreated, Tianzua took the opportunity to attack with all his might. At the same time, he spat out another 0. Holy *T, isn't this a scam? Zhou Wen was originally waiting for the outcome, but to his surprise, there was still a 0. As no one attacked Tianzua again, Tianzua didn't need to restrain himself. He unleashed all his firepower at a Terragrade Guardian, riddling the Guardian's armor with holes before it exploded in midair. Cave Era and company were angry and vexed, but they didn't dare charge forward after saying 0. What was even more infuriating was that after the 0 was spoken, everyone was waiting for something to happen, but nothing happened. Only Tianzua took the opportunity to kill 2 more Guardians. Tianzua, Cave Era, was extremely vexed. If they hadn't been fooled by Tianzua, they wouldn't have fallen into chaos. They might have already forced Tianzua into a corner. The legendary 4 combat gods are nothing much. They are just treacherous people, Hermit said coldly. Tianzua's expression didn't change as he said indifferently, "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" Cave Era saw that Tianzua's expression didn't look like he was joking. She vaguely felt that something was amiss. "My voice," Tianzua said. "What's your voice?" Hermit's heart skipped a beat as he hurriedly asked. Tianzua said indifferently, "I haven't heard anything yet. I can only say that the 4 heavenly kings of the League of Defender are nothing much." Many of the Sunset Army's officers found it odd. They didn't hear any special sounds. Tianzua was speaking, but the voice Tianzua was referring to was clearly not this. Zhou Wen roughly guessed what Tianzua had done, but it was hard to say where exactly. Cave Era and Hermit's expressions changed drastically when they heard that. Hermit shouted, "Oh no!" Cave Era, quickly go back and take a look. Cave Era reacted faster than Hermit. She had already pulled Blood Shaman, and under the effects of the power of time, she instantly vanished and returned to the League of Defender headquarters. The Hermit also fled without hesitation. Tianzua knew that the Hermit's power was strange. If the Hermit was determined to escape, it would be very difficult to stop him. Therefore, Tianzua didn't try to stop him. However, the remaining Terragrade Guardians were in a tragic state. Tianzua started a massacre. The Guardians that fled in all directions were killed by him one by one. None of them managed to escape. Cave Era used the power of time to bring Blood Shaman back to the headquarters of the League of Defender. At first glance, she heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that the headquarters was safe and sound. However, her expression turned ugly the next moment. A strange sound spread through the air, piercing her eardrums and causing her eardrums to hurt. The Cave Era instantly arrived in the sky and looked in the direction of the sky-reaching tower. With this glance, she felt a chill run down her spine as she stood there in a daze. The so-called Tontian Tower was an unfinished space teleportation station that the League of Defender had built at a huge cost and a massive amount of resources with the help of the Dimension. Until now, it had not been completely built. However, in recent years, some basic functions could already be used. Many Guardians of the League of Defender were teleported over through the Tontian Tower. It could be said that the Tontian Tower was the League of Defender's greatest capital. Without the Tontian Tower, there would be no dimensional resources. The League of Defender would no longer have the foundation to stand above other factions. The Tontian Tower was near the League of Defender headquarters. It was like a huge cylinder that pierced through the clouds and led to the sky. Due to the importance of the Tontian Tower, Blood Shaman and Yusuji now would usually take turns guarding it. Apart from that, there were many Terrorgrade Guardians nearby. Furthermore, with Cave Era presiding over the headquarters, it was impossible for anyone to approach the Tontian Tower. However, this time, most of the Guardians who were good at reconnaissance and tracking had been transferred to hunt down in Tianzhua. Blood Shaman had also been transferred away. Not only was Yusuji now left in the Tontian Tower, but Cave Era herself had also left the headquarters. Without a doubt, the Tontian Tower's defense was at its weakest, but even so, it wasn't something ordinary people could approach. Indeed, no one approached the Tower of Babel. However, an aurora-like beam of light streaked across the sky from the south, turning the night into day. The aurora bombarded the Tower of Babel. The huge Tower of Babel seemed to have been pierced through by a drill. It had already collapsed, and the tilted body of the tower happened to fall to the ground at this moment. Boom! Amidst the strange rumble, the ground trembled like an earthquake. The shockwave lifted rocks and soil as it swept in all directions like a tsunami. Within a radius of dozens of kilometers, everything was reduced to ruins. It was as though the end of the world had arrived. Cave Era watched as the aurora tore through the sky like a rainbow. It lasted for nearly 30 seconds before completely disappearing. The sky turned dark again. Cave Era rushed to the vicinity of the ruined Tontian Tower and saw that the Tontian Tower, which was originally 1,000 meters tall, only had a foundation that was less than 100 meters tall left. The rest had collapsed. There were no signs of life in the Tontian Tower. There should have been many League of Defender members inside, but now, not a single one of them could be seen. Within dozens of kilometers, there were pitifully few signs of life. The Guardians on the few lines of defense only had sporadic signs of life left. Many Guardians, who were still in a state of shock, crawled out of the rubble with ashen faces. They still didn't know what had happened, so they no longer had their usual arrogance. At that moment, their faces were filled with confusion and horror. Looking at the scene in front of her, Cave Era felt a bone-piercing chill spread in her heart. Is this his voice? Cave Era muttered to herself as her body involuntarily trembled. Thinking of the man's casual words, Cave Era felt like a devil's curse. Cough, cough. Yusuji now, who was wearing the great Sky Fiend armor, crawled out of the Tontian Tower's foundation. The Terrorgrade Guardian armor on her body was covered in cracks. Dirty blood mixed with mud stained her body and messy hair. Even standing up from the ground was extremely difficult. Cave Era, what happened? Yusuji now asked excitedly. She had nearly been buried with the Tontian Tower. I also want to know what happened. Seeing that Yusuji now wasn't dead, Cave Era still couldn't be happy. The chill in her heart continued spreading. The price of building the Tontian Tower was just too high. The consequences of damage were so high that they couldn't bear it. Furthermore, no one knew if there was a second aurora, nor did they know where the next aurora would descend. The humans and beasts within hundreds of kilometers saw the aurora that pierced through the sky. They also saw the towering Tontian Tower destroyed. Instantly, the entire Federation seemed to explode. All sorts of videos instantly filled the internet. The aurora shocked the entire world. Chapter 1245. The various factions were studying the recording of the aurora. Someone had recorded it rather clearly. An aurora streaked across the sky and pierced through the Tower of God. Then, the Tower of God seemed to be instantly heated up, producing a terrifying high temperature that turned the entire Tower of God into red-hot iron. Then the tower collapsed. The entire Tower of God collapsed, and the explosion produced a powerful shockwave that destroyed everything within a radius of 10 kilometers. It was as though the end of the world had arrived. Xiao Luchuan was dumbfounded as he said after a while, "That's the Tower of Babel. How many people want to clear the Tower of Babel? Even a Terra-grade expert won't be able to return. Yet it was destroyed just like that? The strength of that aurora should be comparable to the strength of a calamity-grade creature. However, it doesn't look like a skill of a calamity-grade creature. It's more like a beam weapon fired by humans," Zhang Chunxiu said, after some thought, with a strange expression. "No way. Can humans create a weapon of that level?" Xiao Luchuan was in disbelief. Who knows? Zhang Chunxiu wasn't sure either. The entire world was discussing the origins of the aurora. At the same time, many people cast suspicious gazes at the family in Luoyang. The League of Defender was pursuing in Tianzhua with all its might, but at this moment, the Tower of God had been bombed. This was too much of a coincidence. However, people were very suspicious if Tianzhua really had that much power. Even someone as powerful as the 4 combat gods couldn't have such powerful strength. Furthermore, Tianzhua wasn't near the Tower of God at all. He was far away on Mount Laojun. However, soon, more suspicious points appeared. As Luoyang was closely monitored by various factions, someone discovered that Sheng had led a group of people and escorted a behemoth into Luoyang. It wasn't strange for him to escort something into Luoyang, but at the critical moment of life and death in Luoyang, Sheng, who was loyal to the family, wasn't in Luoyang. Furthermore, after investigation, they realized that the path he took back was very likely in the direction of the Tower of God. What was even more suspicious was that someone had discovered traces of Holy Pirate in the desert. The family didn't seem to have caught Holy Pirate at all. Everything was pointed at the family, but no one dared to touch them. Even the League of Defender, which had suffered a huge loss, didn't act rashly. Even the spies of the various major factions in Luoyang were ordered to temporarily withdraw. Many of the plans targeting the family were temporarily put on hold. No one wanted such a terrifying attack to fall on their own home. Even a place like the Sky-Split Tower had been destroyed. If it was their home, no one dared to imagine what the consequences would be. For a moment, the family became a scourge, and everyone's expression changed at the mention of it. Before confirming whether or not the clan could still use such terrifying power, it was estimated that no one would dare to forcefully attack the clan. However, many people tried to investigate the family, trying to find out the source of the aurora. However, this was the best outcome that Tianzhua wanted. At least no one dared to hurt his family anymore. Sheng returned to Tianzhua's side. "Overseer, fortunately, we didn't disappoint you and successfully completed the mission." Sheng led a group of soldiers to report to Tianzhua. "Does it feel good?" Tianzhua asked with a smile. "Great," Sheng answered. "Did you enjoy it?" Tianzhua asked again. "Satisfying." All the soldiers who participated in this operation answered loudly. "That's good. In the future, if anyone pisses us off, we'll have a good time." All the members who participated in this operation will be awarded the 3-star Setting Sun Medal. Their military ranks will be raised by 1 rank. Tianzhua rewarded the members who participated in the operation, as well as all the members of the Sunset Army. During the period of Tianzhua's tactical retreat from Luoyang, there wasn't any chaos. All the troops who stayed behind without knowing anything did their jobs and didn't cause any major changes in Luoyang. Li Ma Bai, who had always been a headache to Tianzhua, had helped stabilize the situation in Luoyang during this period of time. This surprised Tianzhua. Tianzhua originally wanted to take this opportunity to purge Luoyang's interior. Li Ma Bai was his greatest threat, but he never expected that Li Ma Bai had no intention of taking advantage of the chaos to occupy Luoyang. That was close. Li Xian had been staying in the Li family the entire time. When he heard the news of Entienzua's return, he felt relieved. He wasn't worried about Entienzua, but glad that Li Mabai hadn't taken the opportunity to forcefully occupy Luoyang during this period of time. Li Mabai glanced at Li Xian contemptuously. To think that you were so close to the Yin family. You can't even see through such a small trick. What great things can you do? I'm not someone who does great things. Li Xian shrugged indifferently. However, he was indeed impressed by Li Mabai. He knew very well how much Li Mabai wished for the Li family to replace the Yin family as the king of Luoyang. However, in the face of such a great temptation, Li Mabai had actually seen through Entienzua's intentions. Furthermore, he firmly believed that Entienzua could return. This was indeed not something ordinary people would dare to do. Not long after Ensheng returned, he went to look for Zhouwen. Zhouwen had also seen the video online. He had long guessed that it was Ensheng's doing. Furthermore, he had already guessed what had emitted the aurora. Back then, Ensheng had taken him to see the huge compression accelerator, but Zhouwen never expected it to be so terrifying. The might of that strike was something even Zhouwen didn't dare take head-on. It was probably comparable to the strength of a calamity-grade entity. Ensheng didn't hide it from Zhouwen and told him the entire story. Young Master One, the Overseer didn't mean to hide it from you. It's just that this operation was too risky. The fewer people who know, the better. If someone notices that something is amiss, we won't be able to lure Cave, Era, and the others over. It's actually very difficult to launch the accelerator at that distance without being discovered by Cave, Era, and the others, and Sheng explained. Zhouwen didn't mind. He nodded and said, "It's indeed very risky. Not only did you lure Cave, Era over, but you also lured the people from the Holy Temple over." And Sheng smiled and said, "Actually, Chancellor Lung was nearby. As long as the Overseer sends a signal, he will come over to rescue us." Zhouwen wasn't surprised. This was in Tianzua's style. There was no reason for him to take such a huge risk without making any preparations. However, although the Overseer didn't say it, I can tell that he's very touched by your help at the critical moment, and Sheng said, "I just don't want anything to happen to Sis Lan and the others." "It has nothing to do with him," Zhouwen said. And Sheng smiled and said, "We're all family. There's no need to make things so clear." After a pause, and Sheng said with a bitter expression, "However, this blast has wiped out the Yin family's years of savings. It's not an exaggeration to say that we've returned to our pre-liberation state overnight. In the future, we'll have to tighten our belts." Zhouwen was slightly taken aback. Does that thing consume so many resources? It's not just huge. It should be said that it's terrifying. If there aren't a large number of unexpected resources, it's impossible for a second blast to happen in the next few years, and Sheng said. "Aren't you afraid that the League of Defender will take revenge during this period of time?" Zhouwen said with a bitter smile. "That depends on if they have the guts to gamble." The Overseer said that they don't have the guts to gamble. And Sheng looked very relaxed as he said to Zhouwen, "However, the Overseer said that this matter can't be known by anyone other than our family. Otherwise, it will be terrible. I can only guarantee that the news won't leak out from me," Zhouwen said solemnly. And Sheng laughed. "If I didn't trust you, the Overseer wouldn't have tacitly allowed me to tell you." As the two of them spoke, and Sheng suddenly received news that another creature had entered the Venus dimensional zone. Chapter 1246. Zhouwen hurriedly took out his phone and opened a mainstream livestream app. Soon, he saw the scene of the Rubik's Cube. Zhouwen was stunned the moment he saw the scene. The creature in the scene was dressed in a white chiffon robe. On the heat wave of Venus, the corners of her clothes fluttered slightly. Her body emitted a faint glow that made one feel refreshed and peaceful. Tsukuyami. Even though Tsukuyami was wearing a veil that covered her face and her figure was blurry in the glow, making it impossible for ordinary people to see her clearly, Zhouwen still recognized her at a glance. Tsukuyami's temperament was just too unique. It was easy to recognize her after spending some time with her. Is Tsukuyami really going in? Zhouwen sighed. Now, he finally understood why Tsukuyami wasn't willing to leave Earth. However, Tsukuyami rejected his help in the end and chose to leave Earth. This puzzled Zhou Wen. Tsukuyumi landed on the platform of the hemispherical metal building. She didn't drip her blood on the platform. Instead, she took a step forward and arrived in the room. Is this a fairy from the legends? She's so beautiful. Could she be a human? I can't tell that she looks like a dimensional creature at all. It's too blurry. I can't see clearly. Perhaps her face is extremely ugly. With that figure and bearing, she can't be ugly. Everyone discussed animatedly. The main point was Tsukuyumi's looks. Tsukuyumi's clothes fluttered as she floated in the room. The metal guard's bullets immediately shot over. Tsukuyumi slowly landed on the ground and ignored the bullet. However, the bullet gradually vanished as it flew, like melting snowflakes dancing under the sun. What was even more terrifying was that it wasn't just the bullet. Even the metal guard's body was slowly disappearing. In the blink of an eye, the metal guard gradually vanished like a bullet. The 6 doors opened as teams of metal guards rushed out from the 6 doors and kept firing at Tsukuyumi. When a rain of bullets flew at Tsukuyumi, they strangely vanished again. It was the same for the metal guards' bodies. In just a moment, more than 100 metal guards vanished one by one, leaving nothing on the ground. There were no dimensional crystals or companion eggs. The room was spotless. The humans watching the battle didn't dare to speak. Ever since the live broadcast of the Rubik's Cube, their knowledge had gradually increased, and they had seen many powerful creatures. For a being as powerful as the dragon turtle, it still needed to reflect the enemy's attack. However, this was the first time he had seen an existence that could destroy the enemy just by standing there without moving. What humans feared the most wasn't the terrifying powers they could see, but the fear of the unknown. They couldn't understand how Tsukuyumi had killed the metal guards, so the fear in their hearts would subconsciously grow. Professor Gu, what do you think of this new mysterious creature? Compared to the dragon turtle, who do you think is stronger? The host of the FBI program asked an old professor for his opinion. Professor Gu was a regular guest of the Rubik's Cube live show. He was strong and knowledgeable. His previous analysis was also quite on point. The audience's evaluation of him was quite high. Professor Gu thought for a moment and said, "The dragon turtle is of a rather high level in the East District's mythology. It's very difficult for ordinary dimensional creatures to compare to it." Professor Gu, do you think that the ability of this mysterious woman is inferior to the dragon turtle? The host wanted to further confirm Professor Gu's meaning. To his surprise, Professor Gu shook his head and said, "On the contrary, I think this mysterious woman is stronger." The host asked in puzzlement, "Professor Gu, I don't understand. You just said that the dragon turtle has a rather high status in the East District's mythology, but now you say that the mysterious woman is stronger than the dragon turtle. Could it be that you have already recognized the mysterious woman's origin? In the myths and legends, is she above the dragon turtle?" Professor Gu said, "You can say that. According to my judgment, this mysterious woman is very likely a famous figure in the East District's mythology. She's the kind that everyone knows. I'm really curious. I believe the audience must be very curious as well. Professor Gu, can you announce the answer now?" The host said, "Of course. If my judgment is correct, this mysterious woman is very likely the one on the moon in the mythology," Professor Gu said with certainty. "Ah, could it be? That mysterious woman is the legendary fairy Chang'e," the host said in surprise. It wasn't just the host. Many of the East District's audience had already gotten excited when they heard Professor Gu's words. Holy sh*t, that figure, that aura, it's really possible. It can't be. Even Fairy Chang'e has appeared. If it's really Fairy Chang'e, I'm willing to live an hour less in exchange for her true appearance. Fairy Chang'e was just too famous in the East District. The audience's enthusiasm instantly exploded. Zhou Wen was at a loss whether to laugh or cry when he heard that. He was a man who had seen the real Chang'e. He thought to himself, I wonder what they will think if they see the real Chang'e. Although Professor Gu hadn't guessed Tsukuyumi's identity correctly, his train of thought was still correct. He had only guessed the mythical system incorrectly. As people discussed the golden god of combat, I had already rushed out and fired at Tsukuyumi. Unfortunately, his bullets didn't have any better effects than the metal guard's bullets. They gradually disappeared mid-flight. The golden god of combat fired a few more shots, but the outcome was the same. Not only did the bullets disappear, even the golden god of combat's body vanished. The golden god of combat that appeared next were basically the same. Tsukuyumi just stood there and did nothing. The golden god of combat disappeared one after another. She's too powerful. As expected of her excellency moon goddess, the uncultured man shouted at the top of his lungs. Is Fairy Chang'e that strong? I don't think she's that strong in the myths and legends, right? In terms of the East District's mythical system, although Chang'e is very famous, in terms of status, she's far inferior to the dragon turtle. Isn't it a little too arbitrary to say that she's Chang'e now? Even if she's really Chang'e, I don't think it's possible for her to be stronger than the dragon turtle. The women were more rational. Most of them insisted that the dragon turtle was stronger. When the host saw that many people were questioning Professor Gu, he continued asking, Professor Gu, many viewers believe that the dragon turtle's status in the mythical system should be higher than Chang'e's. What do you think? Professor Gu nodded and said, in terms of mythical status and contributions, the dragon turtle is indeed higher. However, you can't just look at one aspect. As Professor Gu was explaining, the alarms at the 6 gates had already sounded. The sound drowned out Professor Gu's voice, so he had no choice but to stop his explanation. In fact, no one was listening to his explanation anymore. Everyone wanted to know whether this fairy-like figure could block the 7th spear strike, which would kill them all. Of course, there were also people who suspected that Tsukuyumi might not even be able to withstand the first shot. Bang! After a gunshot, humans realized that the creature inside the door had already fired the first bullet. Chapter 12:47. Everyone's eyes were focused on Tsukuyumi. Basically, no one could see the bullet's trajectory. All they could do was look at the outcome. Tsukuyumi was still standing there like before. Her body hadn't moved at all, but she had raised her left hand. Her slender, jade-like middle and index fingers clamped onto a sharp bullet. The sides of the bullet had caved in from her fingers. Clang! Tsukuyumi released her fingers and allowed the bullet to fall to the ground. Her gaze remained calm as she looked at the door from which the bullet had shot out. She actually clamped it. Everyone was alarmed. After watching the battle for so long, this was the first time they had seen what the bullet looked like. Although the bullet had been clamped to the point of deforming, they could still roughly tell that it was a bullet made of black metal. There were some strange patterns on the bullet's surface. However, as the bullet had already deformed, the patterns could no longer be seen. Bang! Bang! Gunshots rang out one after another. As Tsukuyumi walked to the door, she gently waved her jade-like palm. One bullet after another was caught between her fingers. In a moment, the first 6 shots had been fired, but the 7th shot didn't immediately sound. Tsukuyumi had already walked to the door and extended her palm. Like the previous bullets, the 5 bullets fell to the ground with clanging sounds. Too powerful. Professor Gu is right. This fairy is much stronger than the dragon turtle. Such a beautiful creature and a calamity grade 1 at that. Do you think a companion egg will drop if we kill her? If a companion egg drops, I'll be the first to snatch it. Why do you have to snatch it? If anyone wants to snatch it, it should be God Thief and King of Scavenging. Zhou wasn't in the mood to read the subtitles, nor did he want to listen to Professor Gu and the host's analysis. All his attention was on Tsukuyumi. He was somewhat nervous, unsure if Tsukuyumi could withstand the 7th shot. To this day, no creature had been able to survive the 7th shot. Be it Death Number 10, who had an undying body and indestructibility, or the Calamity Gray Dragon Turtle, they would definitely die. Tsukuyumi walked to the door and was just about to walk in when the 7th shot finally sounded. Upon hearing the gunshot, everyone couldn't help but jolt as they immediately looked at Tsukuyumi. Some people didn't even dare look at Tsukuyumi, afraid that they would see her head explode. Zhou kept staring at Tsukuyumi. After the gunshot, he couldn't help but be alarmed when he saw Tsukuyumi's situation. Tsukuyumi's fingers had already caught the 7th bullet, but the bullet didn't lose its strength just because Tsukuyumi had caught it. The bullet spun violently between Tsukuyumi's fingers, rubbing against Tsukuyumi's moonlight power. The bullet's tip lit up due to the scorching heat. Tsukuyumi glanced at Zhou and nodded slightly at him with a smile in her eyes. Zhou knew that Tsukuyumi should have recognized him, but in the next second, Tsukuyumi turned around and rushed through the door. She was too fast. By the time Zhou wanted to follow, there were already several gunshots inside before it suddenly fell silent. Zhou's heart skipped a beat. The door was still dead silent. Zhou knew that even if he rushed in now, it would be too late. However, he still wanted to take a look, so he used teleportation to rush in. However, there were passageways inside that led in all directions. The 6 doors were all connected. Zhou had also rushed in-game. However, he was killed not long after he rushed in. He hadn't found the dimensional creature that shot the bullet. This time, Zhou pasted a substitute talisman on himself. As long as he was shot, he would immediately flee. However, no one attacked him after he rushed into the passageway and searched for a while. When Zhou passed through the crisscrossing corridor and arrived in front of a metal palace's door, he realized that Tsukuyumi was standing there. She didn't look injured, but Zhou didn't see the dimensional creature's corpse. Just as Zhou was feeling puzzled, the metal palace's door opened with a loud bang, emitting a resplendent glow. The people on Earth also saw this scene through the magic cube. They were as puzzled as Zhou, unsure of what had happened. Zhou retreated into the passageway, not daring to be illuminated by the light shooting out from the palace. As for Tsukuyumi, she stood there without any intention of dodging. Chapter 1248. The light shone on Tsukuyumi's body, but nothing abnormal happened. The fiery red light didn't seem to have any lethality. Just as all sorts of questions arose in everyone's minds, they saw something fly out of the metal palace amidst the scarlet light and slowly land in front of Tsukuyumi. It was a metal ball. What was surprising was that the metal ball looked very similar to Venus itself. The moment Tsukuyumi obtained the metal ball, the Rubik's Cube screen began to change. They couldn't see the scene inside the dimensional zone, nor could they see the usual scene outside Venus. The scene that appeared on the Rubik's Cube wasn't unfamiliar to everyone. It was the Rubik's Cube ranking that they often saw in the past. From 1 to 100, there was only one name in first place. Tsukuyumi. Everyone couldn't help but recite the name. Only then did they realize that it wasn't the Chong they had imagined. Few people in the Federation knew this name, but many people overseas knew this name. After all, she was a top deity in the mythical system. As long as one knew this mythical system, they would most likely have heard of her name. And behind Tsukuyumi, 5 shining golden stars appeared. No one knew what those golden star symbols meant, and no one knew what was going on. However, most people had already guessed that the Rubik's Cube ranking still existed. However, only creatures that had passed through the Venus dimensional zone were qualified to be on it. Such a requirement on the ranking left many people intimidated. What was even more infuriating was that they didn't see the situation after Tsukuyumi entered the door. This was because after Zhou entered the Venus dimensional zone, the Rubik's Cube had been following him. They had seen as much as Zhou. After Tsukuyumi obtained the metal ball, Zhou suddenly felt a strange force transmit over. Then, he returned to the entrance of the Venus dimensional zone. Tsukuyumi also appeared there, still holding the metal ball in her hand. "Follow me." Before Zhou could say a word, Tsukuyumi walked over and grabbed his hand, teleporting him away. However, Tsukuyumi didn't teleport back to Earth. Instead, she arrived on an asteroid. Zhou's knowledge of astronomy was very average, so he didn't know which asteroid it was. However, after using the Singularity Universe to compare, Zhou already knew where he was. They were still in the solar system and hadn't been able to leave. "Thank you for saving me," Tsukuyumi said with a smile, her eyes like crescent moons. "Even without me, you can still catch that bullet, right?" When Emperor's 3 strikes blocked the bullet, Zhou saw Tsukuyumi's other hand move. If his guess wasn't wrong, Tsukuyumi had already discovered the bullet that had circled back. Even if Zhou didn't save her, she could catch it with her abilities. Without you, I'm afraid it wouldn't have been so easy to reach the Golden Palace. You've been a great help, Tsukuyumi said with a smile. Zhou thought nothing of it, but from Tsukuyumi's tone, she didn't seem to be able to kill the dimensional creature. Can you tell me what's going on? Zhou asked after some thought. It's naturally inconvenient for others to ask, but if you want to know, there's nothing inconvenient about it. Tsukuyumi recounted the Venus dimensional zone. Indeed, just as Zhou had thought, Tsukuyumi hadn't killed the dimensional creature. In fact, there was no need to kill it. As long as they could reach the Golden Palace like Tsukuyumi, even if they passed through the Venus dimensional zone, the dimensional creature wouldn't hunt them again. As for the metal ball, it was indeed a reward for passing the Venus dimensional zone. Is that metal ball a companion egg? Zhou asked as he looked at the metal ball in Tsukuyumi's hand. Tsukuyumi threw the metal ball to Zhou. See if it is. Zhou caught the metal ball and realized that although it wasn't big, its weight was astonishing. Furthermore, it had a scorching high temperature. Those below the mythical stage probably couldn't even pick up the metal ball. Even if they forcefully picked it up, they would be burned by the high temperature. Although the metal ball looked very strange, Zhou didn't sense any life aura from it. He only saw 5 golden star-shaped symbols on the metal ball. It doesn't look like a companion egg. What is it? Zhou returned the metal ball to Tsukuyumi. This can be said to be a companion egg, but it can also be said not to be, Tsukuyumi said as she played with the metal ball. What do you mean? Zhou was somewhat puzzled, unsure what Tsukuyumi meant. Tsukuyumi explained, this metal ball is a product of the Venus dimensional zone, but it's not the only one. All creatures that can reach the Golden Palace can obtain a similar ball. After a pause, Tsukuyumi looked at Zhou, with a faint smile, and said, if you can reach the Golden Palace, you will also be able to obtain such a ball. When the time comes, many creatures will obtain the same metal ball. After everything ends, most of the metal balls will become useless. Only a small number of metal balls will become companion eggs, but there's actually only one true companion egg. There's only one true companion egg. Could it be? Zhou realized something as his expression changed slightly. Tsukuyumi saw through Zhou's thoughts. From the looks of it, you should have thought of it. That's right. The appearance of the Venus dimensional zone isn't to kill, but to find a home for the companion beasts on Venus. Only the strongest creature is qualified to obtain its recognition and become its host. What will happen to Venus after that companion beast has a home? Zhou asked with a heavy expression. What do you think will happen when a companion beast breaks out of its shell? Tsukuyumi said, Venus will be destroyed? Zhou knew that he had guessed correctly. Tsukuyumi nodded. Perhaps this is a path that every star has to experience. The billions of stars in the universe are in fact huge companion eggs. However, brute force isn't enough to obtain these companion eggs. Every star has its own unique way of survival. When the companion beasts inside are about to hatch, they will find a home for themselves. Is it the same for Earth? Although Zhou already knew the answer, he couldn't help but ask. In theory, all the stars in the universe are the same. However, Earth seems a little special. This is because there are too many dimensional zones on Earth. Up to now, no one knows which dimensional zone obtains Earth's companion beasts, Tsukuyumi said after some thought. Zhou finally had a clear concept in his mind. If Earth was like Venus, a huge companion egg, then the dimensional zones on Earth might be the same as the dimensional zones on Venus. They were all derived from Earth's companion beasts in order to choose a home. However, for some reason, there were too many dimensional zones derived from Earth. There were so many that it was unknown which dimensional zone was the true test for Earth's companion beasts. The dimensional zones have been searching, but clearly they hadn't found it. What's the level of a real Venus companion beast? Is it at the calamity grade? Zhou asked after some thought. He was also very curious about this matter. Chapter 1249. Who knows? I just came out, so I don't know much, Tsukuyumi said. Those creatures seemed to know that they would die, but they still charged into the Venus dimensional zone. Do you know why? Zhou had always been concerned about this matter. I don't know. Maybe they're unhappy and want to court death, Tsukuyumi said with a smile. Zhou looked at Tsukuyumi for a while without saying a word. He felt that Tsukuyumi definitely knew something, but if she didn't say anything, he couldn't read minds, so he could only give up. Thank you for coming to save me. I'm very happy, but this place isn't suitable for you. Go back, Tsukuyumi said as she stood up. What dangers are there in the universe? Zhou asked again. When you have the strength of a calamity grade, you will naturally know. Tsukuyumi turned around and flew away from the asteroid. Only her cold voice passed through the vacuum and reached Zhou Wen's ears. Unless necessary, don't leave Earth. Zhou Wen wanted to ask something else, but Tsukuyumi had already vanished. What is there in the universe that can make a powerful calamity-grade existence so afraid or even horrified? Zhou Wen looked up at the cosmos, but he couldn't see anything on the asteroid. After entering the universe many times, Zhou Wen knew one thing. The stars that could be seen on Earth couldn't be seen on many other planets. After teleporting back to Earth, Zhou Wen was lucky to appear not far from Luoyang. He quickly returned to Luoyang. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but Luoyang seemed to be more prosperous than before. People came and went, and there were many shops. Zhou Wen quickly realized that it wasn't an illusion. Many of the shops were newly opened, and he had never seen them before. After some thought, he roughly knew what was going on. The various factions were definitely trying to figure out what the Aurora, the family, had created was. If force didn't work, they could only think of other ways. Now, in the huge Luoyang, countless people from all walks of life were spies of other factions. After returning to his room, Zhou Wen eagerly summoned the Emperor's 3 swords. He wanted to figure out why the Emperor's 3 swords could block the 7th bullet. In theory, it was impossible for the Terror-grade Emperor's 3 swords to withstand a strike from a calamity without suffering any damage. Furthermore, the bullet wasn't an ordinary calamity strike. Even so, the Son of Heaven's 3 swords were not damaged. Zhou Wen studied the various abilities and skills of the Emperor's 3 swords one by one, hoping to find the reason why the Emperor's 3 swords hadn't been shattered. That way, he could deduce the 7th bullet's ability. In fact, it wasn't just Zhou Wen who was studying it. The various factions were also studying how the King of Lucky Pickings could block the 7th bullet. Through Tsukuyumi's battle, many people realized that the 7th bullet was especially powerful. After Tsukuyumi, the 8th bullet wasn't that powerful. However, the 7th bullet was blocked by an ancient sword. They want to know what companion beast the ancient sword was and what abilities it had. They wanted to know if they could find a replacement. The various factions were researching this, but no one recognized the 3 swords of the Emperor in Zhou Wen's hand. In reality, there were no 3 swords of the Son of Heaven in real life. Even if they went to the ancient sword tomb, their luck would be heaven-defying. At most, they would get concealed light, shadow-bearing, and night immaculate swords. The 3 swords of the Emperor were fused by Zhou Wen, so it was impossible for it to drop. After figuring out the origins of the ancient sword, the various factions wanted to find the King of Lucky Pickings. It was fine even if they could cooperate with him. Unfortunately, no one knew who the King of Lucky Pickings was. The media kept guessing, but no one guessed that it was Zhou Wen. The information on the 3 swords of the Son of Heaven was very vague to begin with. It didn't have much reference value. Zhou Wen studied it for hours and felt that it might be related to the Wheel of Destiny's unkillable sword. Could it be that this unkillable sword doesn't mean that it can't kill, but that it can't be killed? After some thought, Zhou Wen felt that this was the most likely possibility. In fact, the life providence, fate, and terror transformation were all abilities of the Son of Heaven. He didn't know what they were for, but they didn't seem to have anything to do with immortality. If it's really as I guessed, that this sword can't be killed, it doesn't mean that I can't use it to kill. Then, why can't I pull it out? Zhou Wen thought for a moment and felt that something was amiss. He couldn't figure it out. It was time for the Venus dungeon to respawn. Zhou Wen took the 3 swords of the Son of Heaven into the Venus dungeon to give it a try. He wanted to see if he could use the three swords of the Son of Heaven to block the calamity-grade bullets and not rush to the Golden Palace. He had already learned the route to the Golden Palace from Tsukuyumi. As long as he could block a few bullets, he could rush to the Golden Palace. As for killing the dimensional creature that was shooting, Joa no longer held any hope. Even Tsukuyumi couldn't kill it, so it was even more impossible for Joa now. After all, his body wasn't even at the terror grade. Using the three swords of the Son of Heaven to kill the metal guards was the same as before. He couldn't pull it out at all and could only use it as a rod. With Joa's strength, he could smash the metal guards. Now, there was one thing he could confirm. This sword could kill, and it wasn't a sword that couldn't kill as Joa had previously imagined. However, apart from being hard, the three swords of the Son of Heaven didn't have any other augmentation. Joa found it difficult to even kill the Golden Battle God with it. He failed to kill the Golden Battle God after several strikes. They were both at the terror grade, but the destructive power of the three swords of the Son of Heaven was much weaker than the Shura blade formed by Heaven Azura. Thankfully, Joa didn't expect it to kill. He only hoped to use its strength to block the calamity-grade bullet. Although the three swords of the Son of Heaven was tough enough, Joa still needed to touch the bullet to block the calamity-grade bullet. Due to the huge difference in speed, Joa would be killed when he teleported accurately or when he teleported out. It wasn't easy to use the Son of Heaven's sword to block the bullet. I have to focus and use all means to determine the trajectory of the bullet. I have to prepare to block the bullet in advance. Otherwise, it will definitely be too late if I block the bullet when I see it come out. After some thought, Joa realized that this was the only way to block a calamity-grade bullet. When fighting the Golden Battle God, Joa didn't use all his strength to quickly kill them. Instead, he used their shooting to practice blocking bullets. Joa carved out the terror-grade powers that could strengthen his perception. Great burning heaven and human sovereign appeared at the same time. One protected the blood-colored avatar, while the other fused with its body. Chapter 1250. Although the bullets shot by the Golden Battle God were very fast and powerful, and they had all sorts of attributes, the Golden Battle God's bullets were extremely powerful. However, such an attack didn't pose much of a threat to Joa. His reaction and speed could keep up with the speed of a bullet. Therefore, after practicing for a while, Joa knew that it was meaningless to continue. There was no improvement. However, after using the Emperor's three swords to block all kinds of bullets, he was now very sure that this thing was really quite hard. Bullets of different attributes hit the ancient sword, but not even the scabbard was damaged. Looks like I can only receive calamity-grade bullets directly. Otherwise, it'll be a waste of effort no matter how much I train. After figuring out everything, Joa killed the Golden Battle Gods one by one, preparing to see if they could block calamity-grade bullets. Now, Joa wished that he had the Eye of Odin's powers. That way, he could record the process of a shot and slowly replay it. Unfortunately, Joa didn't have such an ability, so he had to understand the process clearly. Previously, Joa had seen it several times, but every time he would be killed. Not a single time was an accident. Not only could he not block it, but he couldn't even keep up with his speed. He couldn't even dodge. Now that he had the Emperor's three swords, he should be able to block the bullets. However, whether or not the Emperor's three swords could touch the bullets was a problem. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible to encounter them, but Joa had no intention of giving up. Before finishing off the last Golden Battle God, Joa summoned his Terror-Grade companion beast. After the 6 Terror-Grade companion beasts were summoned, Banana Fairy, the 3 Golden Battle Gods, Heaven Azura, and Death Number 10 were imprinted by Joa. The power of fear immediately surged into Joa's body. No, to be more precise, it surged into the limitless Demon Dragon King's armor. Due to the immense amount of energy, the black crystal armor began to emit a terrifying radiance, as if the black crystal was burning. The limitless Demon Dragon King's functions came into play, sharing their powers with Joa. Now, it was equivalent to Joa when having 6 additional Terror-Grade powers. Coupled with his terror transformation powers, Zhou now grasped unprecedented terrifying power. With this power, Zhou held the three swords of heaven tightly and welcomed the calamity grade bullet. Bang! Even though Zhou's reaction was very fast, the spear would have blasted his head apart before he could swing his sword. Furthermore, as the Dragon King armor had condensed immense power, the calamity creature made him its first target. After a single shot, there was nothing left. Is it still not enough? Zhou now deeply felt the difference between the calamity grade and the terror grade. He had obtained the augmentation of 6 terror grade strength, but he couldn't even block an ordinary bullet. It was even more impossible for him to block the 7th bullet. However, it wasn't as if Zhou didn't gain anything. With the augmentation of his powerful strength and the enhanced senses of Brahma and Human Emperor, Zhou could roughly see the bullet's trajectory. However, he couldn't dodge it. Strange. Previously, when I used the Emperor's 3 swords to block the bullets for Tsukuyumi, I could clearly block them. Why is it that I can't even block an ordinary bullet when I'm blocking for myself? Zhou thought for a moment and understood why he couldn't block it. Previously, when he helped Tsukuyumi block the bullet, it was actually a form of prediction. When he saw the bullet turn, he had already predicted that the bullet would shoot at the back of Tsukuyumi's head. Therefore, he could throw the Emperor's 3 swords over in advance. However, when it was his turn to block the bullet, although he knew that the bullet would definitely shoot at him, he didn't know where it would shoot. The Emperor's 3 swords couldn't block his entire family. Without any prediction, he wouldn't be able to block a calamity grade bullet in time if he relied purely on his reaction. The limitless Demon Dragon King armor can borrow the strength of a total of 8 creatures for me to use. I only used 6 this time. I'll try gathering 8 next time. Perhaps I might be able to withstand it. Zhou thought about what companion beast he should use to withstand the attack. As Zhou grinded the dungeon, he thought about the bullet trajectory he had seen today and the prediction he had made when he helped Tsukuyumi block the bullet. That bullet comes and goes like a ghost. Even the shooter can't see it. It's not easy to predict it. Is there no way to predict the bullet's trajectory without seeing the shooter? As Zhou pondered, he practiced in-game. Young Master One, what are you doing? When Sheng came to find Zhou, he saw Zhou gesturing with his empty hands. He didn't know what he was doing, so he asked curiously. I'm practicing my swordsmanship, Zhou said. How can you practice your swordsmanship like this? What's the use of gesturing with your fingers? How can you practice with real weapons? And Sheng said, I also want to practice with real weapons, but no one has such a fast attack speed that can make me feel pressured. Zhou was telling the truth, but to others, they found it a little arrogant. And Sheng understood Zhou's personality and knew that he wasn't an arrogant person. He asked in puzzlement, how fast do you need? As fast as the bullet shot by the calamity-grade creature in the Venus dimensional zone, Zhou said casually. He didn't believe that Sheng could help him find a calamity-grade sparring partner. I only need speed. Are there any requirements for strength? And Sheng asked again. No, as long as I'm fast enough. However, with that kind of speed, it's definitely at the calamity grade. It's impossible for creatures below the calamity grade to have such speed, Zhou said. There's no need for humans to do this. We can use machines to resolve it. Humans definitely can't be that fast, but machines can. All you need is speed and strength. If there's no requirement, there's no need for complicated machinery. A flashlight will do, and Sheng said. Zhou shook his head and said, I've thought of that too. The speed of light is naturally fast enough, but it's impossible for the person using the flashlight to be that fast. As long as I see him use the flashlight to shine at me, I can easily dodge it based on the user's actions. There's a model of a compression accelerator in the military's laboratory. Although it's a model, the principle is the same as a real machine. As long as the degree is input in advance, it will smoothly shoot out light. You can't tell the machine's actions, right? And Sheng said, then can I borrow it? Zhou listened to Sheng's detailed description of the principle and felt that this method might work. He followed Sheng to the Sunset Army's military laboratory and began a new round of practice. Chapter 1251. You call this a model? Zhou looked at the instrument that was the size of a tractor in front of him and asked and Sheng with a strange expression. It's a model indeed. It's only 1/25th the size of a real machine. However, as it's used for simulation experiments, the basic theory and functions are similar to a real machine. It's just that it's a little weaker and doesn't have the functions used in actual operations. And Sheng pointed at the instrument and introduced it. Although it's a little weaker, there's nothing to complain about its speed. Even a terror grade can't dodge it. If you want to practice, it's perfect. How do I operate this thing? Zhou looked at the instrument that resembled the cockpit of a tractor and felt a headache coming on. Although there's a computer that can set the launch parameters, it's still a test product after all. To be safe, someone still needs to guard the control panel. However, this thing can't be seen by others at the moment, so there are only 4 non-staff who have the authority to come here. I'll have to help you. And Sheng entered the control panel. Soon, the front of the instrument that resembled a tractor's nose lit up. In front of it was a black crystal in the shape of a fence. If one looked carefully, they would realize that the fence was formed from tiny hexagonal crystals. Young Master One, I'm about to begin shooting. You have to be careful. And Sheng shouted. Come on. Zhou chose a suitable distance and stood there as he looked at the shiny crystal opposite him. Without any sound or warning, one of the hexagonal crystals shot out a beam of light. It was different from the light elemental skills used by ordinary humans. This was true light speed. Bam! Zhou's chest was struck by the light, and his body didn't move in time. The power of the beam wasn't high. Most of it was equivalent to an attack at the legendary stage. It couldn't even damage Zhou's armor. The speed of light is indeed about the same as the speed of that calamity-grade bullet. Zhou was very satisfied with the model's beam speed. Furthermore, the hexagonal crystals were equivalent to gun barrels. Under Sheng's control, beams of light would shoot out from different crystals. As it was controlled by a computer, Zhou couldn't predict it in advance. All he could do was wait for the beam to shoot out before reacting. He tried many times, but he failed every time. Even if Zhou used the Demon Dragon King armor and the power of a Terrorgrade companion beast, he could only see the beam shoot out. He couldn't dodge in time. The speed of light is too fast. With my current speed, I won't even be able to block it with my sword, let alone dodge it, unless the other party directly hits the Emperor sword with a bullet. Zhou made repeated attempts and quickly determined that it was impossible to block it with speed. Unless he advanced to the Terrorgrade and had the help of 8 Terrorgrade companion beasts, he would be able to react and block the beam in time. Since speed doesn't work, I can only think of another way. As Zhou pondered, he attempted to block the beam with his reaction. Young Master One, it's not feasible to rely on a human's reaction and speed to block light at such a distance. Overseer has also tried, but he can't dodge light speed attacks, and Sheng said. Young Master One, I didn't attack your speed, but from your current speed, it's impossible for you to dodge the light speed attack. Sheng said truthfully. Sheng spoke the truth. He didn't say any unrealistic flattery just because he had a good relationship with Zhou. No, you just said that it's impossible to block the speed of light at this distance. In other words, if the distance is far enough, I can block the speed of light? Zhou asked. Hypothetically, if the distance is far enough and there's a time difference, I should be able to block it. However, this distance is just too huge. It's very difficult to open such a distance. Furthermore, there's another drawback. At such a distance, you won't be able to see the light before it arrives. When you can see the light, it will have already arrived. Therefore, this is only a hypothesis, and Sheng said. Although it's only a hypothesis, it's not impossible. It's still possible to exchange space for time, Zhou muttered to himself. However, just as Sheng had said, the speed of light was too fast. Even 1/10 of a second was enough to cover a distance. To open such a distance in a short period of time, interstellar teleportation could do it, but in the Venus dimensional zone, there was no such distance for Zhou. However, Zhou was good at spatial powers. Perhaps he could give it a try and use spatial skills to open up a distance. Zhou carefully considered the various abilities of the God-fiend era and sky pilfering Sunday. From the looks of the existing spatial skills, it was impossible to stretch space. Previously, Zhou had seen Jiyue use the ability to stretch space. Since someone could do it, it meant that there was definitely such a spatial skill. Where can I get such a spatial skill? Zhou told Ensheng his thoughts. Ensheng thought for a moment and said, I don't know if this method will work, but we don't have dimensional zones that produce such spatial skills here. Even if there are other places, they will definitely be very rare. Furthermore, we can at most buy a mythical skill crystal. No one will sell a Terra-grade skill crystal. Mythical is fine too. What can I buy it? Zhou recalled that Lu Yun could train Star Stealer to the Terra grade, so he could give it a try. We can only go to Holy City's Fireworks Alley to try our luck. That's the only place where it's most likely to be found. Even if the other families have it, they won't sell it casually, Ensheng said. Zhou was no stranger to Holy City's Fireworks Alley. He had been there before. The faceless Buddha at Fireworks Alley was his classmate, Gu Jian. Upon hearing Ensheng's words, Zhou attempted to send a message to Gu Jian, explaining his intention to buy spatial skill crystals. Before long, Gu Jian replied, There are spatial skill crystals, but there aren't any of the ones you mentioned. Even if there are, no one will sell them. Zhou was immediately disappointed. Although it wasn't impossible to create spatial skills, the difficulty of creating them was as difficult as humans discovering the periodic laws of the elements in the past. It required coincidences and constant research. It wasn't something that could be done easily. To his surprise, Gu Jian sent a second message. I know of a place that can produce such spatial skill crystals. The drop rate is very low. If you don't find it troublesome and aren't afraid of death, you can give it a try. Where is it? Zhou was delighted as he hurriedly asked. West District, Time Cabin. Gu Jian quickly replied. Chapter 1252. Zhou smile froze when he saw the words Time Cabin. He had heard of this dimensional zone. He wasn't the only one. There were probably very few people on Earth who didn't know of the Time Cabin. Many mainstream media outlets had reported on the Time Cabin dimensional zone. In that dimensional zone, the flow of time was completely different from the outside world. There was once a person who went in and turned from a young man to a dying old man. There were also old people who turned into babies after entering. Moreover, the flow of time inside was constantly changing. Whether or not one could come out after entering did not depend on how strong one was, but whether one was lucky or not. Some experts who were proficient in time elemental powers might be better after entering the Time Cabin, but Zhou wasn't good at long-lasting powers. Isn't the Time Cabin a time elemental dimensional zone? Why would there be spatial skills? Zhou asked Gu Jian for details. Gu Jian sent the information about the Time Cabin to Zhou. This was clearly confidential information. Many of the contents were not reported by the media. There was a lot of detailed information about the Time Cabin. Although the Time Cabin was called a cabin, there were actually many rooms inside. Each room had a different flow of time. Some rooms had been explored, and the flow of time inside was known. There were also some rooms where the humans who entered never came out, so no one knew what was going on inside. Even in a known room, the flow of time was constantly changing. The spatial skill crystal that Gu Jian mentioned was owned by a mythical creature named Spacetime Piglet in one of the rooms. According to Gu Dian's information, the Spacetime Piglet had both temporal and spatial skills. After killing the Spacetime Piglet, someone obtained a spatial skill. Later, the skill was sold to Cave Era. Cave Era had once used the skill, and it did have the ability to stretch space. Zhou planned on heading to the Time Cabin to take a look. It was too risky to enter the Time Cabin, but he wanted to see if there was a tiny palm symbol there. If he had the tiny palm symbol, he could download the dungeon. Then, he could grind the dungeon in the game. It shouldn't be difficult to get a skill crystal. Young Master One, aren't you going to continue? Ensheng hurriedly shouted at him when he saw that he was about to leave. I'll head out first. I'll practice again when I'm back. Zhou was in a hurry to head to the Time Cabin as he continued walking out. Ensheng moved his mouth wanted to say something, but he didn't say it in the end. After leaving the base with Zhou Wen, and Sheng shook his head helplessly as he watched Zhou Wen's figure disappear. Doesn't this fellow have any normal human needs for entertainment and emotions? The distance to the West District was rather far, but to Zhou Wen, who had the ability to teleport, wasn't too far. Furthermore, it wasn't as risky as others. He took to the West District and treated it as a vacation. Ever since Tsukuyami had passed the Venus dungeon, no other creatures had entered it. All the major factions were making preparations. The most important task was to capture Holy Pirate. Apart from obtaining the Dragon Turtle Companion Egg, they also wanted to use God Pirate's spatial teleportation ability to help them clear the Venus dimensional zone. The creatures in space did not appear again. The black-winged angel from before did not show up. Strange, even Tsukuyami is here. Why didn't that black-winged angel enter the Venus dimensional zone? Could it be that not all creatures in space are restricted? Zhou Wen guessed inwardly. In fact, after Zhou Wen obtained Death Number 10, he had been wondering if he could get another angel companion beast. To his surprise, the black-winged angel never appeared. Ice Maiden and Jade Rabbit were released by Zhou Wen. Demonic Neonate Inya sat on the Earth Elemental Beast's back. This place wasn't far from the time cabin, and there wasn't anyone around. Zhou Wen let them out for some fresh air. Where's this place? It looks pretty good. It was rare for Grim Demon to come out for a breather. He felt excited, as though he had just been released from prison. Everything he saw was fresh. Peninsula of Gods, Zhou Wen answered casually. Zhou Wen had been to the Peninsula of Gods before. Medusa and the Golden Battle God Halberd came from here. He had also obtained the invisibility cloak from here. The scene of him meeting Zhongzia felt like it was yesterday, but now, the two of them were far apart. No one knew if they would have a chance to meet again in the future. I wonder how Lucas is doing now. Zhou Wen thought of the fellow who was known as a hero. 5 years ago, Lucas often sent him messages, but ever since Zhou Wen came out after being trapped for 5 years, he hadn't received any more messages from that fellow. Speaking of which, Zhou Wen really missed that fellow. People like him always left a deep impression. When he arrived at a human city closest to the time cabin, he saw many humans walking on the streets with their companion beasts. Trolls, elemental sprites, sirens, and so on. All sorts of strange companion beasts were a feast for the eyes. In comparison, the companion beasts that Zhou Wen brought were relatively ordinary in appearance. How do I get to the time cabin? Zhou Wen used the money to buy some things in the shop before asking the boss for directions to the time cabin. He only knew that the time cabin was in a forest, but he didn't know its exact location. It's best for outsiders to hire a guide when going to the time cabin. Otherwise, it's very easy to get lost in the strange forest. The boss was very enthusiastic when he saw that Zhou Wen was generous and had spent quite a bit. Do you have a map? Zhou Wen asked. Yes, it's cheap. 20 yuan per copy. However, the paths in a strange forest will always change. There's not much difference between having a map and not having one. Only an experienced guide can quickly find the location of the time cabin. The boss took out a map and handed it to Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen took the map and looked at it. He saw that the map was rather detailed. It marked the path to the strange forest. However, although the map of the strange forest was very detailed, there were many explanations. It said that the paths might not exist at times and could only be used as a reference. This was enough for Zhou Wen. After putting away the map, Zhou Wen asked in passing, which city is the hero of the Peninsula of Gods, Lucas, and what hero, Lucas? The boss was slightly taken aback. It's that famous hero who once killed Medusa. Zhou Wen was somewhat surprised that there was someone on the Peninsula of Gods who didn't recognize Lucas. When the boss heard that, he thought carefully for a while before saying, as though he was enlightened, I think there was such a person. However, that was many years ago. How many heroes are there now? I can't remember people from so long ago. Now, the most famous hero in our Peninsula of Gods is Booth. Chapter 1253. Zhou Wen was somewhat puzzled. He asked a few more people and realized that they didn't know who Lucas was. Even if they knew, they only had some impression of him. No one knew what happened to Lucas. Strange. With Lucas's personality, it's impossible for him to live a peaceful life, right? Joan thought for a moment and sent Lucas a message, but no one replied to him. Could something have happened to that fellow? Joan flipped through the news. The reports on Lucas were all from 4 years ago. After 4 years, there weren't any reports on him. It was as though Lucas had suddenly vanished, but there were no reports of anything happening to him. Although it was very common for humans to die accidentally in this era, it still made him feel uncomfortable to think that someone he knew was gone just like that. He took the map and headed for the strange forest. The strange forest itself was a dimensional zone, and the time cabin could be considered part of it. As the strange forest was very dangerous, not many humans came here. The only good thing about the strange forest was that there were only plant-type dimensional creatures here. Plant-type dimensional creatures were typically immobile. As long as one didn't approach a certain distance, there wouldn't be too much danger. However, plant-type dimensional creatures were mixed among ordinary plants. It wasn't easy to discover them, so it was normal to approach them by mistake. Zhou-Wen's 8 senses were extremely sharp, so it wasn't difficult for him to distinguish plant-type dimensional creatures. After walking into the strange forest, he immediately discovered many plant-type dimensional creatures. From the small grass and mushrooms to the huge towering trees, they could all be dimensional creatures. Furthermore, plant-type dimensional creatures typically didn't have strong auras. It was difficult for ordinary people to tell which were dimensional creatures and which were ordinary plants. Zhou-Wen realized that some of the moss were dimensional creatures. With a thought, he summoned Tai Sui. After Tai Sui discovered the moss, it rushed over excitedly and quickly devoured a large patch of moss. It had been eating the Dragon King goo for the past few years and seemed to be sick of it. Now that it had changed its taste, it appeared very happy. The huge white ball-like Tai Sui skipped ahead to lead the way. The spore-like dimensional creatures in the air were all devoured by Tai Sui. To others, the strange forest might be a forbidden zone of death, but to Zhou-Wen, it wasn't that dangerous. It was about the same as his vegetable field. He also plucked a few dimensional creature flowers. The dimensional flowers didn't dare resist at all, nor did they attack. The scenery here isn't bad. It would be even better if there was some alcohol. It wasn't easy for Grim Demon to be released, so he found everything he saw pretty good. Demonic Neonate did not react at all. She had no interest in beautiful scenery. The Ice Maiden hugged the smallest jade rabbit and sized up her surroundings with her beautiful eyes. However, she was wary of any possible danger. She didn't like such a place filled with vitality. Only a world of ice and snow made her feel comfortable. Such a place made the Ice Maiden feel uncomfortable. She felt terrible at the thought of all kinds of bacteria on the plants. Zhou-Wen compared the map and walked forward. He realized that the map was indeed wrong. Many of the paths and references on the map didn't exist here at all. Zhou-Wen had no choice but to use Truth Listener's ability to search for the time cabin. Unfortunately, he didn't find it within Truth Listener's range. The group could only search slowly. After walking for a short distance, Tai Sui, who was hopping in front of them, suddenly stopped at a place. "What's going on?" Zhou-Wen and company walked over and realized that there was a tree in front of Tai Sui. There was a fist-sized hole at the root. Tai Sui seemed to be very interested in the tree hole. If it wasn't for the fact that it didn't dare act on its own without Zhou-Wen's orders, it would have long crawled in. Zhou-Wen used Truth Listener to observe what was inside the tree hole and quickly realized that the tree hole extended deep underground. The roots below were intertwined, and a huge hole appeared more than 10 meters down. The empty space was rather large. The entire top was the roots of the tree, and below it were some strange dimensional creatures. It wasn't a mushroom, but it didn't look like a mushroom. It looked harder than a mushroom. It didn't look like a Ganoderma either. There were some green teeth on its jade-like body. Zhou-Wen didn't know what dimensional creature it was, but Tai Sui had already eagerly crawled in. Its body was much larger than the hole, but Tai Sui could change its size at will. Its body seemed to transform into liquid as it transformed into a long snake that drilled into the hole. After entering the tree hole, Tai Sui began devouring the strange creatures wantonly. As for the strange creatures, they didn't dare resist. They trembled as they were devoured by Tai Sui without any resistance. Before Zhou, one could figure out what they were, Tai Sui had already devoured them all. Tai Sui emerged from the ground below. Before Zhou, one could figure out what it had devoured. Tai Sui's body secreted a black-gray substance. Not long after, Tai Sui's entire body was enveloped by a layer of extremely hard black-gray substance, as though it had turned into a black-gray rock ball. Tai Sui has evolved. Zhou was slightly taken aback. This had happened too suddenly and too easily. It left him somewhat unused to it. Seeing that Tai Sui didn't react, he didn't know when it would complete its evolution, so he stored it in the chaos bead. "There's someone over there," Grim Demon said as he looked in a direction in the forest. "Let's go over and take a look. If there's really someone, we might be able to find out where the time cabin is." Zhou also sensed that there was a group of humans over there as he carried and walked over. Before long, he saw a group of people heading over. When they saw Zhou and company, they wore wary expressions. Encountering one's own kind in a strange forest was sometimes not a good thing. "May I know which direction the time cabin is?" Zhou asked, not caring what they thought. The elder in the lead sized up Zhou and company for a while before saying, "Are you foreigners? If you want to go to the time cabin, it's best you hire a guide. Otherwise, it's very easy for something to happen. If possible, can you tell me the general direction and location of the time cabin?" Zhou naturally wasn't afraid of any danger. Unless a calamity creature appeared, ordinary dimensional creatures would find it difficult to injure him. Just as the elder was about to say something, a young man in the team pointed in a direction and said, "The time cabin is over there. If you aren't afraid of death, go ahead." Zhou could tell from his tone that something had happened in the time cabin. Chapter 1254. Is there something wrong with the time cabin? Zhou asked. The elder leading the team was very kind. When he heard that, he said, "There's nothing wrong with the time cabin. However, on the path to the time cabin, a terrifying man-eating flower king appeared. Our team suffered a huge loss there. It's best you don't go again." "Thank you for the reminder, but we still want to take a look," Zhou said as he looked at a troll companion beast behind their team. It was a blue-skinned troll. It was 4 to 5 meters tall and looked extremely majestic. On the troll's back was a box. Zhou didn't notice it at first, but a sound suddenly came from the box. Zhou's senses were just too sharp, so he immediately realized that there was a woman tied up in the box. The woman's hands and feet were tied, and her mouth was sealed. At that moment, she seemed to realize that there were others outside, so she desperately slammed the inner wall of the box to make a sound, hoping to be discovered. Seeing Zhou look at the box, the elder said, "If you insist on going, be careful. We have to rush back." "Wait, what's with that box?" Zhou stopped the elder and asked. Although he didn't like to be a busybody, Zhou wouldn't be stingy if he could save a life. Of course, before that, Zhou had to figure out the whole story to prevent himself from blaming a good person. "What has it got to do with you?" The young man glared at Zhou unhappily. However, the elder stopped the young man and said to Zhou, "To be honest, the person in the box is our employer. She paid us to take her to the time cabin, but now that there's a man-eating flower king on the way, we can't pass through it all. A few people have already died, but she still wants to continue forward. We didn't want to see her send herself to her death, so we forcefully brought her back. Can I ask her a few questions?" Zhou felt that the elder didn't seem to be lying, but it was better to clarify matters regarding human lives. "Don't push your luck." The young man was very unhappy. However, the elder stopped the young man from flaring up again. He turned to Zhou and said, "Of course. Actually, we were in the wrong in this matter. Since we accepted her money, we should have sent her there even if we were to die. But this time, it's obvious that we're sending ourselves to our deaths. There's no point in continuing. I'm already an old man, so it doesn't matter if I die, but I can't watch these young people send themselves to their deaths. The money we received will be returned in full in the future. We will also double. With that said, the elder got someone put the box down and opened it for Zhou Wen and company. Well, what are you doing? Is there a need to explain so much to an outsider? When Zhou Wen and company went to look at the box, the young man complained to the elder unhappily. The old man said in a low voice, "You're muddle-headed. These outsiders know nothing about the strange forest. They don't even know the location of the time cabin, but they can come here safely. There must be a very powerful existence among them. We can't be rash with them." Oh, and Zhou Wen and Zhou said with a Zhou, Wen was. Master with Master Zhou. One with you are. With the God, the king is. With God with that one. Su, he with cabin. With. The box had already been opened, and there was indeed a tied-up woman inside. The elder went over and removed the seal on the woman's mouth. The woman immediately shouted, "Hatu, you ungrateful bastard. Back when Lucas was still around, he took good care of you, right? How dare you do this to me?" Fei Luo, it's not that we don't want to send you there, but we really can't deal with that man-eating flower king. You'll only be sending yourself to your death if you go. What's the point? The elder said helplessly as he spread out his hands. It's your business if you're afraid of death. Why are you stopping me? Fei Luo struggled to get out of the box. However, her body was tied up like a worm. She couldn't even stand up, so she could only lie in the box and speak. We don't want you to send yourself to your death, the elder explained. I think you don't want your reputation to be tarnished, right? Fei Luo snorted coldly. What's your relationship with Lucas? Zhou Wen asked Fei Luo. He was somewhat surprised to hear Lucas's name from Fei Luo. I'm Lucas's fiancé. Do you know Lucas? Fei Luo knew that it was because of Zhou Wen that she had the chance to speak. When she saw Zhou Wen ask about Lucas, she hurriedly said. Zhou Wen had never heard Lucas mention a fiancé. After some thought, he asked, "Why are you going to the time cabin?" Naturally, it's to find Lucas. 4 years ago, he went to the time cabin and never returned. I have to find him. Fei Luo gritted her teeth and said, "If you're afraid of death and don't want to go, let me go. I'll go myself. I won't implicate you." "Let her go," Zhou Wen said to the elder. The elder was somewhat hesitant. Although part of the reason was for his team's reputation and he didn't want his employer to die, most of the reason was that he didn't want Fei Luo to send herself to her death. However, most of the reason was that he didn't want Fei Luo to send himself to his death. After all, just as Fei Luo had said, Lucas had taken good care of him in the past. "Don't worry. We'll take her to the time cabin," Zhou Wen said. "You know Lucas?" The elder looked at Zhou Wen and asked carefully. "The great Lucas. I'm proud to have such a friend." Zhou Wen spoke from the bottom of his heart. A person like Lucas was indeed worthy of respect. While the elder was still hesitating, Fei Luo shouted in joy, "Let me go. I'll go with them." The elder sized up Zhou Wen for a while and sighed softly. He got someone to release the chains on Fei Luo. After Fei Luo jumped out of the box, he said to Zhou Wen, "What's your name? I've basically never seen any of Lucas's friends, but I've never seen you before. My name is Zhou Wen. Perhaps he hasn't mentioned me, but I'm indeed his friend," Zhou Wen said. "You're Zhou Wen?" Fei Luo immediately widened his eyes as he pointed at Zhou Wen and asked in surprise and joy, "My name is Zhou Wen. Is there a problem?" Zhou Wen was somewhat puzzled as to why Fei Luo had such a huge reaction. "Which college did you study at?" Fei Luo asked. "Sunset College in the East District. I wonder if you've heard of it." Zhou Wen roughly guessed that Lucas had mentioned him to Fei Luo in the past. "Ah, that's right. You're really Zhou Wen. That's great." Fei Luo was overjoyed. "Fei Luo, is he really Lucas's friend?" the elder asked in puzzlement. "He's not just a friend. He's the person Lucas admires the most." "No, Lucas said that he's a person as great as a god," Fei Luo said solemnly. "You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.